All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Lakeport City Council for Tuesday, September 1st, 2015. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Spillman.
Here.
Councilmember Parlett.
Here.
Councilmember Turner. Here. Councilmember Bettina. Here. And Mayor Shield.
Here. So attend which will lead us in the pledge.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's nice to hear the full audience participation. You get a little bit of an echo when there's that many people in here. Do we have any urgency items? No. All right. We have a posted agenda. Move to approve the agenda as posted.
I'll make a motion to accept the agenda.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you wishing to speak on any of our agenda items tonight, you'll have the opportunity to do so when we're taking up that item. If it's for the public hearing item, you will be limited to 3 minutes on those community inputs. If there is something you wish to speak about that is not on tonight's agenda, but it's under the jurisdiction of the City Council, you may do so. Please fill out one of the white comment forms that are on the table when you come into chambers and hand them to the clerk. But please understand that Council cannot come to a consensus or take action on any item that's not on tonight's posted agenda. You will also have 3 minutes for your topic in public comment. So with that, we move on to the consent agenda, which is expected to be routine and non-controversial. We have 4 items tonight, which include waiving our ordinances except by title, the minutes for the regular City Council meeting of August 18th, the warrants from August 24th, and the designated disabled parking item. Do any council member wish to pull any of those items? Would anyone from the public like to discuss any of those items? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for action.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as posted.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do we have any public presentations?
We do.
Or public input? All right, Mr. Campos, please come forward.
Sure.
Yeah, please state your name for the record.
Don Campos.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here to talk about the Taste of Lakeport and closing the street at 2 p.m. for an evening event. As the owner of Campus Casuals, the second they closed the street down, it just killed our business. And every business on Main Street, which is on my block, closed, and including myself. It was just terrible. I have pictures here that I gave Kenny. I don't know if he submitted them to you, but these were taken after 6:15. Did you get them to him?
Yes.
And there's nobody there. I mean, to close a street 5 hours ahead of event, just to close it, it just kills our business. I had this problem last year when they did it. I went to a meeting with all of the people involved, and they promised it wouldn't happen again. And if it was going to go up, it would go to where we could all be heard and talk about it. We've heard nothing. From what I understand, it's kind of rubber stamped and in front of you guys and just posted. And if I don't follow your posting, I'm just out of luck. And concerned this with Melissa, concerned it with our Margaret here, and it's just wrong. It just kills our business. And when it does that, it takes money out of our account that I had to put out, that I anticipated for Friday, and it came out of my savings this morning because checks are out. We're always out there further than we should be, but we are. We're trying to be an asset to this community. And to do that, everybody wants, to have a full stock, always having to come in and not have to go 2 or 3 times to get the same stuff. I have letters here from other businesses that closed down on the street. Mainly, this was the only one that gave me a letter, was the lady next door, Paula Dukes. If you would like a copy of this for each one of you.
You might hand those to the clerk, sure.
Okay. And Angelina's was a little apprehensive about coming up here, but bashful, and stated that he fully complies with not closing the street again on Main Street, period. When it does it, it kills us. And especially when you have 2 o'clock for an actual, when these pictures were taken that you seen were 6:15, I stayed around 6:15 just talking. There's not a soul on the street except vendors and people coming there was nobody there. Nobody's coming for nothing. And if you had a customer, they had to come all the way from the parked up at the courthouse or wherever, which they didn't come anyway. I didn't have one customer to come in. And again, it's terrible. I went to Margaret here, and we went over this in a full meeting last year for a 2 o'clock closing for an 8 o'clock tree lighting. Just crazy. So I'm here to tell you is I was going to sue the Main Street Association. It cost me $4,000 Friday. It cost me about $10,000 Friday and Saturday over the last situation that we had, which was the day after Thanksgiving. And the small business, National Small Business Day, they closed the street as well then. So I'm here to state that it's just, I can't in good conscience not say anything because it's just gone too far. I've tried to go with the parties and it just hasn't worked out. So I don't know where my 3 minutes lie on all of this.
You're right about there.
Okay, so.
You know what, Ron, too, and you know what we can do for, obviously the Main Street Association is going to, look at all of their events that they put on. And I don't know if when they hold their meetings, if they allow the public to come in, but definitely, I mean, this will be taken to heart.
They do.
But, the consent agenda is not a rubber stamp. You heard how I just approved the consent agenda. I named each item. I asked if anybody wanted to pull it and if there was public input. That happened for this very same item, just so you know. I understand sometimes it's difficult to look at every single meeting. But I think that we can probably make an effort if the Main Street's going to choose to try to keep it in the same locations, that we can have maybe a little bit of a notification for you. So, so you can come to the meeting.
The thing of it is, the library park is wide open. All of the concerts we're over with, I don't complain about them. They don't help me, they don't hurt me. But it's wide open. The street in front of here, they could do the same thing, and it wouldn't hurt it. But every single Main Street person closed down. And it's not a good thing for Main Street. A Main Street Association is not supposed to hurt Main Street. There's one person that has a business that's on that board, and she's Hillside Honda, which is not closed down in front of hers. So I've said my piece. I went to Mr. Parlett here, and I've voiced my opinion to him quite a lot. So, and I try to do it as nicely as I possibly can without having to go to an attorney.
Sure.
Because I just can't. $14,000 in a one-year process is a lot out of a small business. And I thank you for your time. And
sure.
Yes.
And hold true.
Mr. Kempers, if you would like to send me an email, I will get you, if you'd like to come to the committee meeting that they have for Main Street that deals with the Taste of Lakeport, I can get you that information. It's usually at 5:15 to 5:30 in the evening.
All right.
Runs for about an hour, but if you want to, jump in the beginning of that meeting, and just, voice your concern at the meeting, at the committee meeting.
I don't want to have to go to an attorney to try to invite an injunction against it.
Yeah.
This is the thing. The next thing is the day after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, this might be a good starting point.
That would be
Okay.
fantastic.
Just
I would do anything to try to make it work.
send me a contact email and I'll...
campuscash@gmail.com.
Okay.
This is very simple. And again, I know I'm probably over my 3 minutes.
That's fine.
But it's a very big concern to me and the whole association. They absolutely asked me to come and talk for them. And again, we need to have people that's on the board that have some kind of concept of what business is all about.
I'll contact you, make sure that you know when they're having their committee meeting, which will be in a week or so.
Okay.
And see if you can come to that.
And that would be the committee meeting of the
Yeah, it's not the board meeting, it's the actual committee that deals with the Taste of Lakeport.
I had a meeting with those people, including the mayor. I think you were the city manager, excuse me. And it was to no avail. All I asked was we were to be at least acknowledged that this was going to go on and we could come to this meeting before you guys rubber stamped it and pushed it through. And that's where I'm at, why I'm here today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
I'd like to make a comment about, I remember I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, we had a consent agenda and Mayor Pro Tem Matina pulled a number of items from the Lakeport Main Street Association, and we pulled them off the consent agenda so that we could further investigate what was going on and how it was going to be handled. And I think that proves unequivocally that we don't rubber stamp anything. We want to know what's going on. And if there's concerns out there, we want to make sure that those are shared with the Lakeport Main Street Association. We fund them rather handsomely, and they're not out there to the detriment of business, at least they're not supposed to be. So we're trying to do the best thing for the citizens of Lakeport, and Stacy pointed that out by pulling up an item there. And we want to make sure that Ron will be apprised of that, and our member on the Lakeport Main Street Association is going to make sure that that happens. Right, Mark?
Yep, correct.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Campbell. All right, any other citizen input that's happened between now and then? All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, we'll move on to introduction of new employee. All right. Ms. Gwen.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'd like to introduce to you Margot Hoyt. Margot is working in the Administrative Services Department to help offset the retirement of our city clerk. So she will be working with human resources and city clerk functions. She worked in the local care sheds here for a number of years in the administrative offices, and comes with a lot of experience that we plan to put to good use. So, thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Margo Lakeport. Thanks for being with us.
Would you like to give a short speech?
All right, next item we'll be taking up is from our city manager, and this is our 2015 League of Cities Annual Conference resolution, so that we'll be voting on for our annual conference coming up at the end of the month. Margaret? And if you wanted, I can rifle through them.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, since you are the incoming president of our City of California Cities for our division and are more familiar with the resolution items, so that would be great.
Well, the four resolutions we have, and this stems for the public, the League of California Cities is the lobbying entity for cities throughout California. And during our annual conference, our voting delegate, which we've appointed one from our group of council members, will have an equal and same vote as an appointed member from the city of Los Angeles, regardless of the size of the population. So it's definitely a time for when all of the regional league groups come together at the convention. These will be the four main proposed resolutions that the league will then lobby to the legislature and the governor to take up in their next legislative session. And sometimes they are more applicable to Lake County than maybe some of these will be, but just in the previous one, there was a resolution regarding the tremendous impact that illegal marijuana grows have had throughout the state of California, especially in the national forest, in our national forest here. And that was unanimously approved at last year's conference. It's still being negotiated and worked on at the legislature as we speak. So that's how a lot of these items happen, and how the small voice of small communities and small jurisdictions get heard at a state level. So one vote for each jurisdiction, and they're all equal. So which is kind of nice. So we don't get hidden by populations of 1 million in a city. Their vote's the same as 5,000 members. So with that, there are four resolutions. I'll read them by title, and then I'll ask council if they have any questions. Resolution number 1 is relating to league bylaws, amendment regarding succession of league offices to fill vacancies. That one's really more just a housekeeping resolution internally. Number 2 is a resolution of the League of California Cities calling for legislation to preserve therapeutic environments for group homes and avoid impacts of overconcentration of alcohol and drug abuse recovery and treatment facilities in residential neighborhoods. Number 3, resolution of the League of California Cities supporting SB 593, Senator McGuire, and continued local flexibility for cities as they address neighborhood and physical impacts of temporary rentals of residential units. That is like a VRBO or similar. Item number 4 is a resolution calling upon the governor and the legislator to work with the League of California Cities to enact legislation or to otherwise compel Southern California Edison to create a program to automatically provide direct compensation to its customers affected by prolonged electrical power outages under specified circumstances. That one seems a little bit out of our jurisdiction, obviously, because we're PG&E customers. I will say that PG&E does have a program already in place to help similar items that are part of this resolution, which Southern California Edison does not do for their customers. And with that, even though our voting delegate, if council so chooses to take a positive, negative, or abstain from that item, the Los Angeles and Southern California entities also voted on our resolution. for the illegal marijuana growth. So it's definitely statewide, and all those impacts don't necessarily reach each jurisdiction. The cities really do stick together, band together as one lobbying group, and that's how it becomes so successful, or at least hope to be in the legislature. So with that, any questions from council on any of those resolutions or comments? All right, seeing none. Anyone from the public would like to comment or have a question regarding any of those 4 resolutions before we take action? All right, seeing none. I know it's really exciting stuff. We'll bring it back for action, and there is a suggested motion.
I'll make a motion to direct the city of Lakeport's voting delegate to support the 4 resolutions provided in the annual conference resolutions packet.
Second.
We have a motion and multiple seconds. Any further discussion on the matter? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Margaret. All right, next up is our appeal hearing. This is a public hearing continued from our meeting 60 days ago. Don't have the date at hand. And this is continuance of appeal of Planning Commission approval of cell phone tower. This is adopt the resolution granting an appeal from the Planning Commission's decision to approve file number UP 14-09 for a wireless communication facility at 1875 North High Street, and denying file number UP 14-09 due to the fact that the height, appearance, and location of the proposed wireless communication facility does not adequately comply with the applicable criteria and standards specified in the Lakeport Municipal Code and General Plan. That was a mouthful. Kevin, will you be taking up this initially?
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. For the benefit of the public, I want to provide just a brief, well, a semi-brief review of the timeline of events that kind of got us to this point where we are this evening, and also provide a brief summary of the materials found in your staff report packet this evening. On May 13th, the Planning Commission approved a use permit and architectural design review for this application to allow for the placement of a 72-foot wireless communication facility designed as a pine tree, or what the industry calls a monopine structure, on the subject property located at 1875 North High Street. An appeal of the Planning Commission's decision was received, and a public hearing before this City Council was held on June 16th. At the conclusion of that hearing, Council directed staff to prepare a resolution to uphold the appeal and overturn the Planning Commission's approval, based principally upon the design of the monopine structure not being consistent with the neighborhood aesthetic and residential character, and that other more suitable and less visibly obtrusive locations for the siting of this facility were available. The public hearing was then continued to July 7th, at which time the applicant requested and was granted a 60-day continuance in order to explore the suitability of alternative sites and designs. On August 24th, just a few weeks ago, the applicant submitted some supplemental project documentation that included their reiteration that they believe that the 1875 North High Street site still remains the least intrusive site available. Included with their project submittal, there was a summary of the drive test that was used to measure the level of existing service provided by Verizon in the Lakeport area. There was also the results of an August 10th text message inquiry that was conducted by Verizon asking customers in the Lakeport area to show their support for the new tower. There's also contained in their supplemental information a letter from the Lake County Sheriff's Office identifying the need for improved wireless and cellular communication services, particularly in the northern and western portions of Lakeport, to help provide for better emergency services. Also, probably the bulk of the materials that were submitted was a updated and revised alternative site analysis, examining the suitability and potential coverage for 14 alternative site locations. One of the presented alternative sites referenced is the Lake County Courthouse, where several other cellular carrier services are already located. Over the past 60 days, staff has received several inquiries from members of the public as to why Verizon is unable to locate at this facility. According to the alternative analysis prepared by Verizon, the applicant references a conversation in March 2014 with public services staff of the county, which states the existence of some structural issues that have prohibited another carrier from locating at that site, and additionally also citing the county staff was not interested in permitting any additional towers as it was becoming a bit crowded up on the roof facility. To confirm this, I reached out to Lake County Public Services staff, and yesterday I spoke with Jeff Ryan, the Deputy Public Services Director, and Bob Allen, who's head of Building and Grounds over there. And they stated that the structural issues that they did speak to in March of 2014 have been overcome, and that other wireless carrier has since located up on that rooftop. They also said that it is getting a bit crowded up there, but there is probably some room for perhaps a modest structure up on the northeastern corner of that building. Additionally, they acknowledged that there was space on the old jail building that sits directly behind the courthouse building as well. And Mr. Ryan did specifically note to me that that probably was not made available to Verizon during that initial conversation in March of 2014. But I did want to kind of pass that on to council because I think it is definitely applicable for our discussion this evening. The last item that was submitted by the project applicant includes an alternative design for the 1875 North High Street site. Rather than the monopine design, in lieu they are proposing a faux water tower design that would sit at approximately 60 feet in height in relatively the same location. So consistent with the council's direction on June 16th, staff has prepared a resolution for the approval of the subject of appeal and the overturning of the Planning Commission's May 13th decision to approve the 72-foot monopine structure. But there are other options that are available to your council this evening, including the denial of the appeal or consideration of the presented faux water tower design. If this last option for the faux water tower design is something that the council wishes to kind of explore in more detail, staff is recommending that take a close look at the architectural design review guidelines of the zoning ordinance and then appropriately amend the project conditions of approval accordingly if that's the direction that you guys want to go. If that's the case, we can certainly add more information as we go down that line. But I know there's a number of people wishing to speak tonight. The applicant is also available here and indicated to me that they have some members of their legal team and also some radio frequency engineers who are also available to answer questions. And then I also know that the appellant is also in the audience as well. So I'm sure you guys have several questions. There's a lot of information here.
Any initial questions for Kevin? All right, at this time, I know that the appellant, Mrs. Rizika, is in. Nancy, do you wish to speak at all? You'll have another opportunity as well, but at this point initially.
I did not request a 60-day extension, and I think Verizon should be, I would suggest they be allowed to speak. Thank you, and I'll defer till later.
Thanks, Nancy. All right, with that, Ms. Walker, either you or your team.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, before she starts, no, that's right. Come on.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to say to the public, I watched Ms. Blocker sit up in front of a rather difficult situation, and she's never rolled her eyes. She's never made a comment. She's conducted herself very well, and I just hope that the public can do the same. I'm probably not the easiest person up here for this subject for her, so I just ask that show her politeness, please. Thank you.
I would only echo that goes for anybody that's inside this room, at any meeting at any given time. So Ms. Walker, with that, please proceed. And please state your name for the record.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Jenny Blocker. I'm here representing Verizon Wireless. As Kevin mentioned, I brought with me two very key team members from Verizon, Verizon Legal, Paul Albritton, as well as the radio frequency engineer, Ben Santamaria. I know Mr. Albritton would like to also give some sort of introduction. I'll keep mine brief. And both Paul and Ben are here for any additional questions you may have. So, I know we've spoke on many occasions about this project, so I won't bore you back with some repetitive details. But identifying locations for a new wireless facility is an incredibly time-consuming, arduous, and complex process, in which many factors are considered. It requires that the radio frequency engineer identify a significant gap in coverage in a very limited area. It requires that a site acquisition specialist find a willing landlord who agrees to the length of the contract as well as our contractual terms. It requires that the location itself is in compliance with the city or county code. It requires a clearance of potential title issues, the ability to bring access to the site, power, telco, fiber, the ability to satisfy federal requirements such as CEQA, NEPA, and SHPO, and the ability to actually build the site, which requires structural engineering and soils. With this list is not even exhaustive. Some projects may evaluate 4 or 5 alternative locations before deciding on a specific location to propose as a new cell facility. For Verizon, and specifically for this project, we have evaluated 14 alternative locations and designs. This specific location at 1875 North High Street was selected as the least intrusive option to fill the significant coverage gap that the city of Lakeport is currently experiencing. We have conducted an exhaustive analysis of alternative locations and have provided technical justification as to why this candidate is truly the least intrusive. As Mr. Ingram mentioned, on November 6, 2014, Verizon filed an application with the City of Lakeport for this use permit. Working very closely with staff over these 7 months, Verizon and the city found an aesthetic that would work for both. Specifically, the Community Development Department was presented with multiple options in terms of design, and more specifically, multiple options in terms of what the monopine would look like. The Community Development Department had a great hand in working with Verizon to choose a design that really worked best in this area. Ultimately, the Community Development Department released their staff report in preparation for the May 13th Planning Commission hearing, in which they made a recommendation of approval. Specifically, they stated, based on the information that has been submitted by the applicant, the site visit, the response from city staff and other affected agencies, it is concluded that the proposed installation and operation of a new wireless communications facility on a site located in the C2 zoning district is in conformance with the city's use permit. On May 13th, 2015, the Planning Commission went ahead with a 4-0 unanimous vote to approve this facility. Since then, this project has been appealed, and we've asked for a 60-day continuance. Within the 60-day continuance, Verizon has conducted even further supplemental studies, including a drive test and looking at additional alternative locations. We've concluded, again, that this site is the least intrusive location and meets the legal standard. Just to take a second to say that this project may consist of a 72-foot monopine that's tucked away in a commercial center, not visible from a public right-of-way, but it also represents a lot more. Our society has become very dependent on the use of smartphones, tablets, voice data, texting, internet, and more. In fact, just sitting here, I think I heard 3 cell phones ring. With the demand of wireless data expected to grow 650% in the next few years, and with 40% of households being a cell phone only household, meaning they don't have a landline, the need for reliable service is critical. Reliable cell phone service and data is important for modern life. The need for personal use, the operation of businesses, tourism, education, and perhaps most importantly, and close here in Lake County, the need for phone service in emergency situations. The FCC has determined that 70% of 911 calls come from mobile phones. When there is a lack of wireless infrastructure in an area, as the city of Lakeport is currently experiencing, the public may not be able to communicate with loved ones, businesses may not be able to communicate with their customers, tourism is severely hindered because they may not be able to access places to patronize, schools may not be able to run with necessary educational computer programs, and those in an emergency may not be able to reach the emergency services that they so desperately need. Said simply, many aspects of modern day life suffer without a 21st century system. With that, I request that the original recommendation of approval from the Community Development Department and the unanimous approval by the Planning Commission is upheld. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Paul Albritton, who is the legal counsel of Verizon, to continue with the introduction, but I'm happy to answer questions now or whatever you see fit to bring it back up to. Thank you very much.
Council, you want to wait till they're, okay, yeah, we'll wait. Thanks, Ms. Blocker.
Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Paul Albrecht, I'm outside counsel for Verizon Wireless.
Can't hear you.
Good evening.
Thank you,
I'm
sir.
Paul Albrecht, outside counsel for Verizon Wireless. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening. I did send a letter today. I apologize for late mail. I sent it out by email. I have extra copies. I don't know if you want them now.
I
or not.
Yeah, we probably should have the clerk and then,
While I'm handing out things,
I have one.
we also sent up our materials in the form of a booklet. I have more of those if you'd like to refer to those this evening. If anyone wants.
Anyone from council would like a copy of that? Yeah, I'm good with that. I have everything. I have all the letters.
Sorry, my apologies.
I think Councilmember Turner would like one of the
Yes.
the
Actually,
booklets.
I get one of them.
Oh, she would.
I got the letter.
No, sorry.
It's all
So thank you. Paul Albrecht, outside counsel for Verizon Wireless. And I want to start out by saying that Verizon Wireless doesn't like being in this position. Verizon Wireless is here to provide wireless service to your community, to Lakeport, the emergency services personnel, and to the community in general. And I think the one issue that is not or isn't here is whether there's a gap in Verizon Wireless service. Ben Santamaria, our RF engineer, is here. There's a statement in our supplemental information that includes a drive test. Clearly shows that there's a coverage and capacity problem in Lakeport. And in his analysis from our prior letter, we show how the sector that is currently serving this area, about a mile west, will run out of capacity. In that document, it said by July 2015. And so you've got a situation where people's usage of the network and the amount of data that's being used is overtaxing the single site that is currently serving Lakeport. And we know that there's both a coverage and a capacity problem, and Verizon Wireless plans out 3 years ahead to try and resolve these problems, and has been working about 2 years to provide a facility in Lakeport. And they did that, of course, through their contractor, Complete Wireless, and Jenny Blocker, and they've spent quite a bit of time looking at site, negotiating leases, trying to find the right place, working with the planning department, locating a commercial location, using a disguised design in order to get the recommendation of the planning commission, the planning director, planning department, and subsequently the unanimous support of the planning commission. So they were taken aback or a little surprised by the appellant response and subsequent community response that was driven by appellant in order to oppose the facility. We asked for additional time to go out and see if there was another way to address that gap. Jenny came up here, and Ben Santamaria came up here, and Dana Diamond, who's in the back of the room, and a Verizon Wireless employee, came up here with others to investigate all of the alternatives that they'd looked at before, and additional alternatives that had been suggested by the community and by you. And all, we count 16, I heard 14, all 16 alternatives are reviewed in the document that you prepared. And frankly, I was hoping they'd find something so that I didn't have to come up here and try and tell you why you need to approve the current facility. But they didn't. They were unable to. And part of our problem is that the topography here is undulating. We need to be able to look over a topographical rise slightly to the north end of town and serve the schools and areas that are to the north, including Lakeshore Boulevard. And we need a facility that's got antennas that are about 60 feet in height in order to do that. And driving around town today, one has to ask oneself, where do I put a 60-foot facility? And I think the homework that's been done by Verizon Wireless, they've located in a commercial location with limited impact on residences around it. There are trees in the area. There aren't trees immediately adjacent to this pole, but there are trees like it in the community. And it's partly those trees as well, not just the topographic rise to the north, but also the trees. There's a tree that's 56 feet tall right next to where the facility needs to go. And our antennas need to be able to look over that tree in order to provide the service that Verizon Wireless is trying to provide to the community. So the federal law has a number of limitations on what you do, and I'm sure you've heard them, you've heard them from your city attorney. One is that you have to have substantial evidence to deny the site. Now, the substantial evidence really is based on your findings, and your findings are whether it's compatible with the community, whether it fits within your general plan. Now, the planning department and the planning commission both felt that we had done our job, that we'd come up with a design and a location that was compatible and was not going to be something that was an offense aesthetically or otherwise to the community. Now, in your current findings, that's all been reversed. This is, of course it is. It's going to be ugly. It's going to stand out. But we think, of course, that the planning department and the planning commission was correct. In those circumstances, though, where we challenge that substantial evidence. But in those circumstances, where a community comes up with substantial evidence for denial of a facility, the Telecommunications Act of 1996, 47 U.S.C. Section 332, provides a protection for wireless carriers. And it says, if you have identified a significant gap, which we believe we clearly have done, and you have selected the least intrusive facility to fill that gap, that two-prong analysis supersedes the local denial based on substantial evidence. Because to deny the facility would deny Verizon Wireless the ability to provide service in a feasible manner to Lakeport. So we feel the significant gap has been identified and that we've identified the least intrusive alternative for filling that gap. And we've met this prima facie burden, this minimum burden, to show that denying this site will deny Verizon Wireless the ability to provide service in this area, which would constitute a prohibition of service. So I am in the very awkward place of if the site is denied, then of advising Verizon Wireless of their legal rights to proceed under this federal law because service has been denied, because we've identified a significant gap and the least intrusive alternative. Now, there can be debate about the alternatives, and the the resolution approving the appeal debates some of our conclusions about the alternatives. We have provided propagation maps prepared by proprietary software that Ben Santa Maria can talk about, showing why alternatives don't work for us. We've spoken to landlords. In my response letter today, the resolution granting the appeal says that we should go back to the appellant's property and put a cupola on one of her buildings. And yet, in the last meeting before you, she absolutely stated in writing and in person that she would not allow for a facility to go on her property. So the resolution attempts to address some of our alternatives, but not with evidence, but conjecture about whether a site will cover an area or not. And we certainly will stand behind our RF engineering and our propagation maps. And we'll do that here, and we'll do that in subsequent venues as necessary. But we'd rather not do that. We'd really rather work with you to come up with a location where we can get our 60 feet of pipe and we can provide service to Lakeport. But we're stuck. We can't find another alternative that can do that, where we have a willing landlord, where we're going in a commercial area, which is recommended by your code, where we're able to camouflage the facility and make it appear as similar, and we believe looks similar to other trees in the area as you drive through Lakeport, but has the height to serve that undulating geography as well as get over the ridge to the north and offload our facility to the west. We would be pleased to hear your concepts on design. We proposed a water tank. Verizon Wireless has done many, many kinds of camouflage facilities, from clock towers to whatever it may be, and would be pleased to do that. But the case law simply is that in the seminal cases, the Anacortes case and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Anacortes has a 119-foot wireless tower, simple monopole tower in the middle, because T-Mobile couldn't find anywhere else to go. And T-Mobile came up with 19 alternatives in that case, and the federal court said, that's enough. You get to put it in your facility. I believe we're close to that here. I asked the RF engineer about the Civic Center and the jail, and I will talk to them more to see maybe we need more time to look at that. But once you deny this facility, we have 30 days then to decide to go to court or not on this issue. And we'd rather not. We'd rather resolve it with you in a more amicable manner. So the gap is real. It's 3.8 square miles. It's 3,600 people, 6,300 people a day go down Lakeshore Boulevard, or trips during, and we provided the graphics and information to show you need the service. I have to say, I'm sorry, coincidentally, I was down at the lake looking at all the properties today, and of course, my phone call dropped. So, and you have 281 customers of ours who sent a text message, some of them very, very clear. One of them, are you kidding? Of course we need better service. And we need better service for visitors. Stop scaring away visitors. We need it for our businesses. So I think, although they're not in this room because it's hard to get cell phone users into a room to jump up and down and say they want a cell tower, you have residents and we have customers that outnumber the people in this room, and they're demanding that kind of service. So that's our statement. We'll come back on rebuttal and try and see if there's some other avenues that we can pursue together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Albright. Anything directly for Mr. Albright right now? Or I know there's going to be some questions for the engineer. I can see.
We have the engineer and Ms. Walker.
So before you get too far away, my question is, so we have an alleged gap based on the drive study and the information that you've done. And although we have heavily vested landowners that have bought and paid for property and they find it aesthetically non-pleasing, that you're saying that you could literally go to federal court and compel us to do this in spite of the fact that we have people that have been living here maybe 10, 20, 30 years, never had to look out the window at a fake 72-foot monopine tree, and we could be compelled to do that and also spend a bunch of money fighting you to get the right to this appeal and holding it up. Is that the situation?
Yes.
Anything further at this point for Mr. Albright?
The federal law clearly, the wireless service is governed by the FCC and by the federal government. And there's a reason behind that. If we had different standards all across the United States or even across the cities of the state of California, we would have 350 different patchwork of regulations regarding a service that people expect to work here, in San Francisco, in New York, in Chicago, or here to call loved ones in Utah or in the Philippines. So it is a matter of national concern that there is a workable, viable wireless network for business, for commerce, for health, and everything else. And that's why the federal law has these protections to supersede local jurisdictions. We have not had to sue a jurisdiction for 10 years in order to do this. In fact, we're usually working with jurisdictions to defend them from lawsuits from neighbors. In this particular case, we're located on commercial property, which is what your code requests us to do. We're located adjacent to another commercial property. There are residential properties around it, but if you've been there, and I'm sure you have, there are trees around this particular location that help screen it. It is designed as a faux tree, and I have to tell you that faux trees are very good. We passed one on the way up here today that former Supervisor Kearns of Sonoma approved it. He said, I still can't find that tree where you did that tree. This one is not surrounded by other trees, but when you look at the landscape here, you see many tall pine trees standing alone. And those that know it's a facility will say, there's the cell tower. But over time, it will blend into the landscape. And those that don't know it's a cell tower, I think will be surprised. So, short answer, all the way along.
Mr. Albert, did you take the sign-in sheet accidentally in your papers? All right, good. Just Mr. Mayor, if I may,
please.
Just wanted to note that the letter that Mr. Albritton passed out is one that our city clerk has made copies of and put on the back table, and then the packet of material that he brought up is in the agenda packet as well.
So everything's been submitted to the public as well. Good. I think we're all anxious to hear from the engineer as well. So.
My name is Benjamin Santamaria. I'm the Verizon Wireless RF engineer. You've pretty much heard all the statements. I'm really here to answer any questions that you may have. So I'm just going to open it up if you have any questions for me.
You've done anywhere from 14 to 16 different site analysis and so forth. And I know it's a very cumbersome, and I have to give credit to the Verizon and the different companies involved with this to try and do this type of exhaustive research. But it also, because it's so exhaustive, there's also options that could have been left out due to the fact that maybe they had this preferred site and they leaned on it a little bit too much. And when I look at the Pasantino property up on 11th Street, and they say, well, it's actually not too high because it's going to interfere with the other one, and then, but did you consider maybe dropping it down a little bit on the 11th Street property across from Safeway so that it maybe wouldn't interfere and it would cover the gap? I mean, and then this new information that Kevin has come up with about the fact that there is an opportunity. I mean, this casual conversation with some guy at the courthouse that said, oh, it's too crowded up there, and oh yeah, the roof's leaking, you can't go up there. And now it's not a problem, and we could put it up there, we could put the jail up there. It really concerns me because we have, a lot of people that live there and are vested in their property, and they want, the tranquility and the beauty and the aesthetics, and that's our issue here. It's not the fact that we need it, that there's a gap, and it's not great for public safety and all these wonderful things. You guys do a great job making a compelling argument for the fact that we need all this. My concern is that how far are you willing to go in a lawsuit rather than go do more research and say, well, maybe we could do the jail. Or maybe we could go up on the courthouse and find that little northeast corner and see if that
would work. If we could please, especially when council is talking, if we could hold the applause.
So anyway, my concern is that I know that they're really heavily vested in this, and when I talked to Jenny last time, they were, part of the extension was that they wanted to consider a new design and also other locations. But it was mostly a new design, which we've seen, and 60-foot water tower. Oh, wow, that's great. So my question to you is that have you had any predisposition to looking at possibly the courthouse and looking at the jail, lowering the possibility of up on 11th Street where you have a really nice high plateau, dropping it down so that it doesn't interfere with the one that's 1 mile west? That would be my concern, because it's the least obtrusive alternative so far. And that's how I feel about it. I don't feel that you really finished combing this dog all the way out. I mean, this is something that it's like, yeah, right now we've done all this work we wanted.
Well, I can speak on the actual Safeway location. If you look adjacent, basically due north to the Safeway location, there's a elevation gap that's between the Safeway and also the northern area of Lakeport, which it would require a facility approximately, I want to say 250 feet to overcome, that would reach into North Lakeport. And one of my coverage objectives for this particular facility is to reach the northern area of Lakeport, especially the school area and things like that, to provide coverage around that area. As far as the courthouse, the information was said there that it wasn't a viable candidate. Off of the top of my head, I can tell you that it's pretty far south, about, I want to say, approximately half a mile south of where I'd like it to be, and it would still pose a coverage gap between that area and the northern area of Lakeport, which is what I want, what my coverage objectives would be for this particular facility.
But have you tested that? Because that was my same disappointment, was that, your site, although it's commercial, it's surrounded by residential. So to me, when I think of where would I put it, I think of the courthouse. And it just seems that we didn't really, you guys never fully looked into that site as an option.
Because that information that the courthouse was a viable candidate was not made available until approximately 10 minutes ago.
Folks, please, hold your comments.
If we wanted them to be able to do that further, how would that work at this point?
I mean, they would probably need to contact and work directly with with Public Services who, for the courthouse, who manage those facilities up there. I mean, in their defense, when I talked with Mr. Ryan, who's the Deputy Public Services Director there, he says a lot had changed from that initial conversation, and he has not had another conversation with them, but he certainly understood why they came away with that opinion that it was not a viable site. But given the new information, it may be something that they could explore.
So that's what I'm asking, what do we need to do here today so that we can see if that's a...
It probably would need to continue the hearing in order to allow them adequate time to contact, County Public Services Department to investigate that alternative.
And Verizon would be willing to look into that site further?
That's not Mr. Albritton question.
You could let him answer.
He was quick.
Down. No.
Please stay up.
And I actually was conferring with my client back there, and he's trying to, and I'll get a solid answer for you, I promise. But I want to point out that this has been a long process. The last time that the courthouse was contacted was March of 2014. And it's true that time passes and we need to keep all this information up to date. But we proceed, once a location's been identified and cleared with the planning department, we go through a long process of coming up with a lease, as you might imagine. Construction design, planning design, finally getting a hearing before the planning commission can take a great deal of time. So I'll confer with my client. I think that it makes sense for us to fully evaluate that alternative if in fact it's available. But I'll confer with my client. And there are, and I did talk to Ben. He does have some concerns about serving the north, but I think you'd have to carefully evaluate the same.
And that's one of my next questions is, you're anticipating that a courthouse location or any other location similar to the Pasadena property may not cover as perfectly as 1875 North Main, but I haven't seen a single test done from any location that would actually definitively show what that coverage would be in the gap. I mean, I don't think any of my fellow council members I know there's a gap, and I understand that gap needs to be met. I would like to meet it. I would like for all of our Lakeport citizens that are Verizon customers to have service throughout those areas. But have any of these locations actually where the engineering test is put up some kind of an antenna up there, shoot the signal out, you go to the worst portions of the gap area and figure out if it's adequate, good, poor, will work or won't?
I can only speak on the actual drive test results. As far as what you're asking, that would be called a contiguous wave test, and those have not been conducted.
Okay. Let's do it. Yeah, you know what it means.
Folks, please. Any further questions? Mr. Alberto.
Why haven't we done I addressed that in my letter. And for better or for worse, I've been working with wireless companies for 30 years. Constant wave test is quite an undertaking, as you might imagine. It requires getting a cherry picker truck or something else to hold an antenna up and broadcast a constant wave while another truck drives around and measures signal. And it takes quite a bit of time. It takes months to set up, actually, and requires special equipment that Verizon Wireless actually contracts out to have done. So it's not done on a regular basis because of the proprietary software that Verizon Wireless uses, GeoPlan software, which has been customized for Verizon Wireless to match the frequency ranges. There are 4 frequencies that Verizon Wireless operates on. And so most of their evaluation of sites is done by propagation maps. The propagation maps and drive tests have been used in federal court cases for quite some time to determine whether alternatives are valid or not. And rarely do you see drive test data. So it would be unique to spend that kind of time and effort and resource in order to evaluate 16 alternatives. If there is truly a viable potential alternative, then it's a possibility. Another possible use of a constant wave test, if you were to so lean in that direction, would be to narrow down the actual height that this facility would have to be on the proposed location. Ben tells me he thinks he's pretty close to a couple of feet of the height that it needs to be. but it might resolve a couple of feet off of the height that we believe we need at that location. But it involves, again, a crane, or particularly when you're talking about heights of 60 feet, getting an antenna very high, and then in this case, driving routes all the way up north towards the school and so forth in order to evaluate. And it just takes time, I guess, and resources. So it is not commonly done, but certainly there would be some opportunities for it.
Thank you. Anything, questions for Mr. Santamaria?
Well, the thing that strikes me is it's very expensive to lay cable out to non-cable areas, but once they get the cable out there, they get money in perpetuity, and they raise rates in perpetuity, as Mediacom does to all of us all the time. And it goes on, and it just happened to me for another $40, and it happens all the time. So once the drive test is done, and then we narrow it down, and I think that and I have to compliment the whole group and the research and the great, excellent way that you're presenting the material so that we can all understand it, even if we're like very humble and not very intelligent. But the fact is that when you're doing something that's going to be like this, we can narrow it down through planning and saying, these are the two options, could we do this test? Because when we finally drop the hammer on these people and say, well, you're going to have to live with this for the rest of your life, the expense to Verizon is not a big concern to the people that have to look out their windows or look up the hill or down the street and see this thing in perpetuity, but the money comes in forever. And so it might be a little bit expensive, it's not done regularly, and I totally understand why, and I know this is a very expensive process. And I really give you credit for doing everything you can to try and make us all happy. And I know you don't want to be in an adversarial position with the council and the people that are in here, but by the same token, we have a situation to uphold the aesthetic quality of the town in which we live, to do the best for our community. And if there's an option on the top of Safeway, or on the top of the courthouse, or at the jail, and at 11th Street, maybe there's only 3 options, maybe it wouldn't be that expensive. But then if we have to do something that's just horrible to avoid a lawsuit, then we can say, hey, we did everything we could. And that's our job, is to try and provide the best possible service, provide for aesthetic appreciation of the beautiful tourist community in which we live. So I feel that, yeah, it might be an expense, but for us, we need to be sure that when we make this decision, that we are doing the right thing for all concerned. And so that's why I think that these tests might need to be done, as Mayor Pro Tem pointed out.
And I don't mean to get into a debate with you, and I won't, but I just want to say that where Ben's software makes him confident that that test isn't required, it isn't done. But where there's the possibility that the test will make a difference, then it is done. And of course, I leave it up to Ben to make those kinds of decisions. But you can understand what I'm saying. There's a range that the software, it's the reason it was designed, evaluates the location and can determine that it's not going to be feasible. And in those narrow circumstances, then a constant wave test is used. Frequently, a constant wave test is used where there's intervening clutter or foliage in order to determine the azimuths and the right direction of the antennas to avoid foliage. And so it's a very specific test. So I'm not trying to suggest that it deals with resources so much as you make the broad look, and if the broad look puts you in the right direction, you may make the more narrow review.
Basically, what I'm saying is, the option that we have now is off the table. I would like to find another one that works, whether it's the jail or the courthouse or Safeway or Pasantino property. That's kind of what I'm saying right now, because otherwise we'll see you in court, more, so to speak.
Well, that may be the case. And I've been to the Pasantino property, and I think we've given a very clear reason why the Pasantino property doesn't work. When you're standing there on the property, you can hear Highway 29. And our other facility is just on the other side of Highway 29, about half a mile. And you would have 2 sites that were a quarter mile away from Highway 29, providing service at Highway 29, and there will not be a dominant signal between those 2 facilities, and the phones won't know which cell tower to go to, and it will not work. It will also,
it's a technical problem.
It's interference, and it's signal to noise. There will be way too much RF noise for the cell phone. Remember that the cell phones have to get back to the tower to distinguish which cell tower it's supposed to talk to and who it's talking to. And in addition, we liken this to sprinklers in a lawn. If you move 2 sprinklers together, you're going to leave a brown spot at the far end of the lawn, and that's what happens here. If you go to the Pasantino property, you're not serving eastern Lakeport or northern Lakeport, and you're overburdening this one particular area and actually degrading the signal on Highway 29. So that's why the Pasantino property doesn't work. I understand your point. You're saying, I don't want that facility. And if we do all of our research and go back and look at the courthouse and jail, and it doesn't work, we'll be back at this location, and I agree with you. I hope that we're not having to try and get it in court. But it's, again, our goal to provide the service in the least intrusive means. And if the least intrusive means creates impact, and I have to say there's only one residential property that abuts on that property. The rest is commercial. That is sometimes the burden of publicly serving utilities. And I'm sure you've had situations in this town where you had to put in some kind of public service or block a street for a fair where you impact the immediately adjacent neighbors, which are providing a tremendous public service. People don't like to have a light standard in front of their house in their bedroom window, but they want a lighted sidewalk. That's the situation you have here, and that's why we're trying to provide service.
Well, the question at hand, though, is would the courthouse be a viable option? And we don't know the answer.
Our research regarding leasing is 18 months old. Ben has his concerns about the RF, but I will not. You've heard me say it. I just checked with our client. We're willing to evaluate that if that's something that you want to continue and have us do. But we'll let you listen to the public and feel. I think there's some other hurdles we'd like to overcome as well, but that's where we are right now.
Thank you, Mitch. Any further questions for Mr. Santamaria?
Real quick, Ben, if we moved forward and looked at the courthouse, what would be the time frame to do some hard testing on that?
For me to run confident propagation maps as well as do traffic testing, I would say 2 to 3 weeks.
Further before we move on to the public hearing. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, at this point, Nancy, did you want to add something, or would you rather me go ahead and open up the public hearing?
I would like to remind you of one correction to the statement made here about the courthouse roof. If you recall, the very first city council meeting, I offered 2 alternatives, not only the Pasentino property, but the courthouse roof. And Verizon has had 60 days, and they have contacted neither party. That's all I want to add at this time, but I think the public has a lot to say about this. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. All right, at this time, we're going to open the public hearing, and you will have each member, if you wish to speak on this, you may do so, and you will have 3 minutes to make your comments and or ask questions. And then if they are direct questions from the applicant and their staff, I will ask that they please write down those questions, and we can take care of those all at one time, just in the essence of flow. So with that, Council, ready for public hearing? All right, this time we'll open up the public hearing. And for those interested in speaking, please, when you do approach the podium, state your name for the record, and if you wish your name spelled correctly, please write it on the clipboard there.
My name is Fred Fig. I'm the neighbor to the proposed site. I'm using a lot of their worksheet and I guess their maps of stuff. And within their packet, they were talking about a tower being close to water, not being viable, that it would have problems with their signal. The proposed site is only a few hundred yards away from the water as it is, and so to throw some more wood on the fire, what about Natural High or Dutch Harbor as a proposed site, which is, you guys could say yay or nay to that. Being close to water, those 3 have very similar properties there as far as being close, and those aren't being used. The text that was sent out by Verizon was unsolicited, And it was sent to people, not just necessarily in North Lakeport, but just all around. And I contend that the way the message was worded, that the bottom line is, would you like better service? Well, naturally, they want better service. And I think they're going to have a very favorable approach to saying, yeah, I want better service. I would also say if they were to have added to that text message that we're going to put a cell tower in, you're going to get better service, but your bill is going to be increased, I would like to have seen the responses to those, knowing that, okay, well, no, maybe I don't want it now, if their bill is going to be increased because of this tower. And I bet if they knew that this tower that was going to give them better service was in their backyard, they may not have been that too kind about it either. There's been a lot of talk of the health issue of the cell towers. And the American companies or American agencies have determined there's really no significant problem with having RF signals, towers nearby. But there are other countries around the world that have done studies and have come up with all kinds of things that have said that they are detrimental to children, women of pregnancy. We don't get to use we have to use our agencies as our authorities, and not, I guess the other people just don't count.
Mr. Figg, sorry, about 30 seconds.
How much more?
About 30 seconds.
Thank you. The small cell network, if you were to look at the map that they show for I think they're called the propagation maps or whatever it is, the small cell network has almost the same identical coverage as the proposed North High Street sites. So if you compare the two maps, I don't see I think the small cell network is a viable resource for putting this in instead of using the tower. And that's all I have then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Figg. Appreciate it. All right, next, come on up, please.
Hello,
Good evening. And again, please state your name for the record.
my name is Rosemary Hyden. I live at 315 17th Street, just kind of across the parking lot from the proposed tower.
And what was your last name? I'm sorry.
Hyden. Hyden. And I own my house. I lived there for 30 years, and I'm a property owner and taxpayer. And I'm hoping that City Council will not allow this tower to go in because all of us that live in the area don't want it. I'll just keep using my landline, or they can find some other way, but don't put it right where we live where we have to look at it. And I do fear that there's a health issue. I don't care what some agency says, it scares me. And I don't want to live near it. So I just hope that you will do your job and not let them put in this tower, and don't be afraid of being sued, because we'll just get the media on them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next, please, come on up. Come on up.
My name is Elizabeth Kaneshige, and I'm wondering if everybody else feels like they need a cigarette after what Verizon thinks that they're unable to do to us and to our civil rights. I mean, if we don't matter and you don't matter, why do we have a city council at all? You know, because that's pretty much what they're saying, is you can say what you want, but we're going to sue your asses. And you know, we're not a bunch of cockroaches. We're not going to roll over and play dead. And they can put up a big tower that looks like it came from Hooterville. You know, Petticoat Junction is what that looks like. But we're not Hooterville people. We're not the nerds that they think we are. We know what we want. We know what we don't want. And we don't want some for-profit company. I mean, a minute ago, it sounded like they were looking out for our best interests. It was benevolence. It's money. They want to come here and make money, and they're going to damage all of our sense of security about those that fear because we have cancer, and because of the thousands. I'm a realtor. My sister's a broker. We all know what this is going to do to our property value. So maybe Horizon has done this to lots of other little Hootervilles, and we should all have a class action lawsuit to get our money back, because they're going to make money on us, but we're going to get nothing except a big drop in our property value. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Next, please, come on up. Good evening.
My name is Carrie Hershey, and I am a tenant in High Street Shopping Center. And I'll just say it again that I have been in business for 25 years. I've been a tenant at the shopping center for 15 years. I want to stay there, but I don't want to work under a cell phone tower all day. I also have a petition here that I'd like to present from neighbors of the shopping center, as well as my customers who really don't want to come to my business under a cell phone tower. I hold all-day classes where the ladies are there quilting for 6 to 8 hours a day, often, and are opposed to it as well. So I don't know if you would like to...
You can stand to the clerk, please. Yeah.
Thank you. And there's only not as many signatures there as I would like, because when the Verizon text message went out, a friend of mine notified me, and that's when we started the petition. So we did it only in about a week's time. I would like to just share a little bit of my personal research. I wanted to get a perspective of the height of 72 feet. So I had 2 friends that work for PG&E, and I'm sorry, I'm nervous. And I asked them, how tall is the average PG&E pole? And of course, there's not an average. Different heights are required for different things. You know, a transformer's on one height, maybe something else is on a different height. But on High Street, a good average on High Street is possibly a 45-foot pole set 6 feet in the ground, so making it 39 feet high. That's kind of the average height of going along High Street. So a 72-foot high fake Christmas tree would be almost twice a PG&E pole. So that gave me kind of a perspective of the height of what this would be. The water tower design, being a little bit less than that, is still well over the height of a PG&E pole. So did a little bit of homework on that. I also asked a few of my friends who live in North Lakeport, who are Verizon customers, and I asked them about their service. And I said, do you have any problems with your service driving from town out to your North Lakeport residence? A lot of them live, 3 or 4 miles out Lakeshore, and they said no. So to me, that said there's not a super significant gap in service. There might be a gap in service, but it's not the end of the world type of thing. I also read the report that talked about the letter regarding the test drives, and the North Lakeport area is served by Middletown Towers and also by Lucerne Towers. And that made me wonder about, well, if the Lucerne Tower comes across the water and serves the North Lakeport area, why can't a tower be on the hills of Lucerne to correct that gap and not be in anybody's neighborhood?
Folks, please too, is when everyone's speaking, please then give them the same respect that they would give you.
Okay, and then on this...
You have about 30 seconds. That's
okay.
right.
Okay, one thing I would like to ask is one of the site locations, and let me see if I can find it. I believe it's on page 19. A lot of these sites, the first sentence says, Verizon Wireless investigated this residentially zoned property. All of these properties that they're looking at are residentially zoned, and even though our shopping center is commercially zoned, it is directly adjacent to a residence, which is specifically stated in this page, a facility that could only be directly adjacent to a residence on that parcel. So why is that one disqualified when our High Street one is not, when there's directly adjacent residence?
You'll need to wrap up.
Okay. I would like to ask Verizon to please respect the desires of the neighborhood and the small businesses and locate elsewhere. It is an intrusive location. It is not the least intrusive. And they're not the only company in town. They act like they are, and they're not. And it is an offense to us in the neighborhood. And I would like to ask the council to approve the appeal, and also to remind us that we, Lakeport, have residences, they have customers.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, Suzanne.
Good evening. My name is Suzanne Lyons. I have a business right underneath where they want to put this proposed fake whatever. I love it. It's not French. You know, fake is fake. Faux makes it sound different, but it's not. It's fake. One of the questions that I have, I keep hearing, one of the things that annoys me, I do roll my eyes when people tell me things that I just can't believe they're saying. We're not talking about something that's going to be tucked away and not visible from a public right-of-way. I don't know how anybody can say that. Every time I come to one of these meetings, I hear about, well, there are other trees in the area that are the same height. No, there aren't. There are other trees in the area that look just like them. No, there aren't. I drive to that location every day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day. What we're seeing is not what we're going to get. When I look at the pictures in their packet, they're showing pictures hiding behind a tree from the back side. They're not showing pictures of what it looks like when you drive by on the main street. There is one option in here that's a PG&E yard that looks bad from every angle, and instead of taking the angle that would show from the main street, they've gone around the corner and taken an angle from the back to make it look different. If you're not trying to hide something, why are you being deceptive? Why are you taking pictures that don't show what things are going to really be like? I have a question about the tower. It doesn't show any arms. Is the tower not going to have any arms? Are they not going to sell parts of it down low? Where are these arms going to be, these antennas that are supposed to stick out? The other question I have is, why can't they buy an antenna on somebody else's tower? Why do they need their own tower? That doesn't sound to me like it's exactly trying to give people good service. It sounds to me like it's somebody who's trying to make money, which I'm not against, but tell it how it is. They say that they would be pleased to look at other options, but they've had a lot of time to look at other options, and then they didn't look at options, and then they come and say, give us more time, and we'll look at another option. We have a report here that says that it is like a new report from August of this month, or August of this year, but when you look at it, it's just a new cover and an old report. So, I mean, I'm hearing, well, we're doing all this work, and we're really trying to do a good job here. Well, you don't just put a new cover on a report and give us the same old thing. You know, the first page in that report says we talked to Jeff Bryant, but when you look at it, you talked to him 1.5 years ago. And they didn't even have the decency to go talk to him again. That, to me, is not good faith actually trying to solve this problem.
About 30 seconds.
Okay, all I'm going to say is I live right around the corner. I have T-Mobile. I have no trouble getting signals.
All right, next, please. Come on up, don't be shy. Well, I know he's not shy.
No shyness there.
My name's Bob Bridges, and 60 days ago, I was really hopeful that this wasn't going to be, that they were really going to go out and find a new place and make everybody happy. And I've been involved in hundreds and hundreds of land use applications where developers that are sincere and really try hard do find alternatives and really work at it. But I'm afraid what's gone on in the last 60 days has just been a sham. They haven't done anything. It took me 2 or 3 days to figure out that the courthouse information they had in the original packet was all wrong. They never went up and tried. And so they never really tried anything. I also want to say that this, in several of their sites they dismissed, they talk about, oh, we sent a letter to them, they never responded, so it's not available to us. Well, shoot, I've helped acquire thousands of pieces of property in my career. And if you just send a letter out, you don't get a response from half the people anyway. You knock on doors, you make phone calls. They didn't really make a sincere effort on these properties to try to really track people down. They didn't make a sincere effort to update this thing. And personally, I just think they're blowing you guys off. And they're just saying, hey, we're going to do whatever the hell we want, and we're just going to shine these people on. And they're not, you gave them a chance to do a good job. They didn't do anything, in my opinion, except for try to fortify the position they've already taken. And I think you're wasting your time to give them more time, because I know right now, their attitude has already told you, all they're going to do is go out and buttress their case that we can't do anything but what we want to do. And I think you're wasting your time. These letters of support, these are ridiculous. You don't know who they are, you don't know where they live. I guess you do know what they ask them. For all you know, these are the sixth graders that walk past my house every day with a phone in their hand. That's just, these have no value. This is just crazy. And of course, everyone wants better service, but at what price? On this faux tower thing, the water tower, my son lives down in Windsor, and actually, if you drive around down that area, you see a lot of these towers. But as far as I know, this is like totally alien to Lake County. I have never seen one of these around here. It would look weird, and it doesn't really have any basis in our county. So anyway, I just think, I also want to remind you, the representative told you back at one of the last hearings that if we turned this down, they would go away. And it was like, oh boy, I'm really sad. And now they're saying, we're going to sue you. Well, shoot, I think the truth is that there's good locations out there they haven't really explored because they just are lazy and don't want to look. There's other places out there, I'm sure. I thought about, oh, by the way, Roy Mulhauser owns a piece of commercially zoned property just north of the courthouse. He said he'd been approached in the past for a cell phone tower, that it was determined to be a good site by their engineers, and that someone in this building nixed it. So he said he's open right now. He'd love to talk to these people about putting one on his place up there.
30 seconds left.
So anyway, I think there's other sites out there. I don't think they've really looked. And in terms of that school valley over there, maybe they need to put another tower. Or out north of the put it on the Indian Ranchery out there. They're exempt from everything, and then it would get covered there. All right. Anyway, but I think you should deny this thing tonight. I think these people you've given them 60 days. They didn't make a good faith effort. It's just they ignored co-location, which is a preferred alternative. And I think you guys should send them away.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Come on up. Good evening.
Hey, Keith Bryce. I just wanted to say, Lakeport has a lot of special memories and stuff for our family. We've come up here ever since the 50s, ski racing. My wife Donna here that's in the audience has been in the Guinness Book of Records for 38 years as the world's fastest water skier. 3-time USA water ski team member, Catalina racing champion, blah, blah, blah. We moved up here from LA to get away from this type of stuff. She's a retired school teacher. And she made a point the last meeting that the kids do walk across the property there well within a few hundred feet, if not less. And the RF frequencies, if you just Google them, you'll be blown away. I had the smart meter taken off my house. She took a friend down that's a retired teacher today to a doctor's appointment that's dying of cancer, lymph nodes, everything, has 6 months to live. And she backed up and said, the prognosis all started 3 years ago when the smart meter was put in. Okay, that's just a smart meter. Now we're talking about something a lot worse than that. So I'm not worried about a cosmetic issue with a tree or a fake thing or whatever. I'm worried about glowing. So, the bottom line is people here need to Google RF frequency. Okay, Nikola Tesla, you name it, man. It's out there, and it's toxic. So I just pray that they'll go for another site. I've been a Verizon customer for 10 years. I'm I've got 4G right now in my pocket, so I'm cool. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Press.
Got a lot of video.
And, ladies and gentlemen, too, just a reminder, and we do want to hear your comments, all of your opinions, regardless of what they are. But I did want to remind everyone that we are not allowed to deliberate our decision based on any radio frequency issue, health issue, or otherwise. We are strictly here discussing our findings, which are solely based on Verizon's ability or inability to find the least intrusive location and make their case for the gap, as well as the aesthetic value is something that we can definitely look at. So, but still, if you have those concerns, we still want to hear them. By no means should you not bring them up, but please understand that we unfortunately cannot deliberate on that specific item to make the decision. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Debbie Bielenberg. I'm here for a point of clarification. There's a lot of animosity. And there's a lot of possibilities here, but how many times did the Planning Commission okay this?
Once.
Once.
Well, that's all they're required to do.
But it's been up here a couple times in the lawsuit and all that. Just want to know, okay, it's already been approved for some reason.
Yes.
Okay. You guys are just taking the flat for them.
Well, no, an appeal was filed.
Yes, I got that. That's the 60 days.
No. When an appeal is filed for any planning commission decision, it goes before the city council. So that's what, otherwise it never would have come before us. Either if the planning commission denied it and then Verizon appealed the denial, then they could come before us as well. It'd just be the opposite.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
See, you had to go to the planning commission meetings.
Next, please, come on up.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Well, you ought to go to the meetings.
I was asked to turn
There you
this
go.
one of the audience members.
Go to the law.
Okay,
I'm James
thank you.
Scott. How you doing?
Good evening, Mr. Scott.
I live at the end of 20th Street, 1403 Wild Oak. I looked at all your plot plans. Good work. My zone stays yellow most of the time. And with those proposed tower, it still stays yellow. So, I propose an alternative. Why don't you look at my place? Okay? I'm at 1430 elevation. I don't know if it's too high. Got a 130 by 90 area. It's flat. It's residential though. I don't know if that's a problem. My neighbor says, I don't want anything built in that area right next to my house. That's per se another person living, another occupancy. That's interesting. But, so I would offer up the opportunity for that consideration. I don't know if you like the idea or not, but it's out there. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Good evening, Ms. Moss.
I am Joan Moss. I do not live in Lakeport. I spend a great deal of time watching government work. I know Maria Turner has done the same thing. I know Mr. Bridges was many years at County Council. You have the responsibility to represent the people who voted for you. Verizon has the responsibility to have a cell phone tower. I want to say today that talking to a department head of the county government is not a way to find out if a cell phone tower is appropriate on the top of the courthouse. You have to go to at least 2 or 3 different departments. You have to make a study. You have to get an engineer and a consultant. And I'm sure Mariah Turner, as a former clerk to the board and now working in the planning, knows all the steps a person has to take to really check out the courthouse as a viable alternative. I would like to see a specific report on the specific steps and letters and communications made by Verizon to all these other 14 locations. They can't just say, well, we talked to somebody and they said no. It's not that simple. And the people here in Lake County are very intelligent, and so are you, and so is our attorney. And we don't swallow things. We look at them and study them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Parlett, we are in fact intelligent.
Yeah.
Next, please.
George. I just wrote it on my name.
Good evening.
Mayor, Councilman.
State your name for the record, please.
George Lynn. I've been a cell phone carrier for nearly 30 years. Probably one of the first in this room. I happen to have my service with another carrier, and I don't seem to have any of the problems that they seem to say they have. We have friends in all kinds of areas in Lakeport and the surrounding areas. We visit them, and unfortunately, because I'm a state officer of an organization, I'm on the phone all the time, wherever I may happen to be, and I really have no gap in service with this other carrier. I think that there have been some good things brought up today. One of the things that did bother me, I went to the earlier hearing, and I remember hearing the representative talk about, well, if we don't get what we want, it was kind of like a line drawn in the sand, and that really turned me off. So I'm wondering, when they have gone out and done surveys of all these other locations, with all of their testing and so on, it's them doing their testing. Is there no independent testing?
Right on.
So, I think that they are committed to do what they want to do. I happen to think that where my company has their tower seems to work well for Lakeport as someone who travels throughout the city. So I would like to see them reinvestigate the courthouse or areas around there, because I think that is where my tower is. I really don't know, but I think it is, from what I've read in some of the material. So that would be my suggestion, that they be directed to do that and come back with a plan that is not in a residential or quasi-residential area, because where they're trying to put it, let's face it, it's commercial, but it's really a residential area. So let's get it out of residential and really into commercial. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Next, please, come on up. And Nancy, once we close the public hearing, we'll provide time for you.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Donna Bryce, and I live at 200 Via Del Lago. And George, who just spoke, is one of my neighbors in Del Lago. And yes, I am a world record holder, and yes, we came up here for the past 30 years. I was sponsored by Vic Edelbrock, Jerry Herbst of Terrible Herbst Oil. We spent a lot of time, good times here, lots of money. They had lots of money. They treated me good. My husband and I waited 30 years to retire here. I'm not a high-powered attorney for Verizon, and with all due respect, Mark, they get paid a lot of money not to roll their eyes. We're not.
You have to stay in the microphone.
Yeah, we're not happy. I've never lost a call at my house, never. Never lost a Verizon call. We've been with them for a long time. We like Verizon. I don't like the bill I pay each month. It's quite high for 4 people, but they've been good service for us. But I don't want to look at that thing. I mean, it's ugly. I think, and I agree with what George said, we need an independent study. Can the city hire somebody independent so we don't have to, just rely on their findings and their studies? And I just don't want to see my retirement, because I'm going to move. If the cell tower goes in, I'm moving. We're leaving. And it makes me sad. I get teary-eyed to think about that because I love the view of the lake. I've spent many a time in the hospitals getting fixed up by the wonderful doctors and nurses here. I'm still in one piece, and I want to enjoy my retirement without looking at a Verizon tower. So thank you so much for, your support.
And Mrs. Bryce, one question off topic. Did you ever ski on Mr. Maher's skis, the Maharajas?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, you bet. He's a good friend. He's a good friend. I'll sign autographs later.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? This is going to be your final opportunity. Come on up.
It's damn past time. Good evening. Robert Jelinas. I actually work in the cell industry. I'm a tower and radio technician, predominantly building Verizon cell sites.
And folks, you have to please address us, not the crowd, and use the microphone.
You know, maybe about 80 years ago, a bunch of people gathered and said, hell no, we don't want power lines along our streets. We don't want to see those ugly poles and those wires. Even today, drive up 11th Street, look at the phone wires. They're in shambles. Your infrastructure of communication here sucks. It is weak. It is antiquated. People don't think ahead. They're talking about my house, my view, now. What about 20 years from now? A city or a community doesn't remain in stasis very long. It is either going to thrive or it is going to die. There are too many empty buildings in this town. Progress needs to happen. I could go into great numbers and explain that in all reality, your microwave oven is more dangerous than a cell tower. You would have to be 3 feet in front of the antennas to receive any appreciable RF energy. What you get at the ground is less than what comes off your phone. People don't seem to look at the whole picture. It makes me wonder, I'm tempted to use an insulting term like backwards, but if one were to look at the FCC and the FDA websites regarding RF exposure, you'll find that it's completely safe. A crosswalk 200 feet away is not a concern. If you look in cities, you will find cell sites on top of schools and almost every civic structure available. You have them on top of your courthouse. Nobody's complaining about spending time there.
Well, except the convicts. They don't know anything.
Well, you know, it comes down to a NIMBY or a not in my backyard kind of a thing. If you don't make progress, you're going to slide backwards. It's got to go in somebody's backyard. The location on High Street, geographically, is great for propagation of signal. One can simply stand there and look and know it's far enough from Scotts Valley, it's going to light up Lucerne beautifully, it's going to work. Even though I'm an AT&T phone, I have Verizon tablet data. And the black hole does exist. There's an entire square mile in civilized portion of this county that has no cell reception and no internet either because your phone wires won't support data. Your infrastructure needs to grow. I've heard a few people tonight say it's all about money. All about money?
30 seconds.
Who else has $2.5 million to spend on cell sites in your community over the next few years?
AT&T.
Folks, please, withhold your comments.
Fair competition in our country. I've been coming to this community for 20 years on vacations in the summer to visit my friends and enjoy the lake and the people. I've recently had the experience of getting to live here for 5 months and get to know a great many of you, and it's been great. I'd like to see this town live on and thrive. Progress needs to happen. People need to become educated about what it is that they're so vehemently opposed to. It's frightening.
You can wrap it up, please.
In the past, I've gone into communities where they fought tooth and nail to not have a cell tower go up. By the time we, the crew who fit out the tower, arrived, everything turned around. People welcomed us into their homes. Grass Valley, Garden Valley, late last year, 2 such communities. Great complaints. They didn't want a tree. Once it was up,
You need a final statement. Make it quick, please.
folks,
Sorry.
if you could drop that tree on that site overnight, I can almost guarantee none of these people would even see it as they drove by. They're not ugly. They work.
Thank you, Mr. Clemus.
It's the radiation.
Folks, please.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, the discussion happens at the podium. If you want to discuss things outside of that podium, please remove yourself from council chambers. Thank you.
Carrie Hershey again, just quickly.
Ms. Hershey, let me make sure that everybody has spoken from the public, and then I'll allow you to come back. I need to let everybody at least have one chance. So if there is another member of the public, anyone? This is going to be your final call. Okay. Come on up, please.
Hi, I'm Meg Harper. I presented some things, well, via my son, via former student. I was unable to make the last 2 meetings, and I'm glad to be here tonight. I think everything's been covered. I don't want to repeat myself. I had a question for the engineer. Can I ask
Well, you can ask us. They are writing it down, and then we're going to bring them back up and
Okay.
answer everyone's questions.
If the tower is larger, like on 11th Street, like if it's higher, 72 feet, does it then not interfere with Scotts Valley Tower? That was my question to him.
And I'm sure they're going to be able to answer that too.
So, anyway, I think that we need more due diligence on their side. It's become apparent that they really haven't done much in 60 days. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. Anyone else from the public that hasn't spoken yet? All right, seeing that, Ms. Hershey, please. And thank you for being patient.
I just again would like to ask the council, right here on our agenda, it says the appeal hearing, and it says that we want to adopt the resolution granting the appeal based on that the facility does not adequately comply with the applicable criteria and standards specified in the Lakeport Municipal Code and General Plan. So if that is true, and we have General Plan and Code things already in place, putting the cell tower there at that site, if that violates those things that we already have in the General Plan and our Municipal Code, that's the biggie. I mean, it doesn't fit what we already have in place. And just aside from what our community wants, we trust you'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hershey. All right, last call for anyone from the community that wishes to speak on this topic. All right, seeing none, we're going to close the public hearing.
No, Nancy.
Well, Nancy's outside of the public hearing because she is the appellant. So Nancy, please come up if you'd like to speak.
I think we just called you extra special.
I'd also like to thank the Verizon representative that we've heard from in the past for addressing very appropriately tonight, and she's always been very respectful. I'd like to add that. I appeal this after being the only person to attend the May 13th Planning Commission hearing. There was one other person that wrote a letter objecting. This has been held over the head of my shopping center since May 13th. And I've spent many sleepless nights. I've gone around the country looking at this thing, talking to people. And I ask you to make a decision tonight. Verizon has said, maybe they need to look at the courthouse a little bit more. And as I got up here and said, I brought up those two places at the very first hearing. And I checked recently and found out that they did not follow through on this. They have done nothing. So I'd like to get, the water tower is something new, and I'd like to address that. And someone said to me, Nancy, there hasn't been a water tower in Lakeport for over 100 years. Those were used to water horses, cows, etc. And we've been a city for quite a few years, and we have wonderful water. It will look very much out of place. Someone else brought to my attention, when you look at a car parked in the shopping center of High Street Village in one of these photographs, how high is a car? Less than 6 feet tall, and it looks like it's a Hot Wheels car compared to what a cell phone tower will really look like there. Be monopine or a water tower. The renderings are deceptive looking at it from Del Lago and from High Street. It makes the tower look much closer to High Street than it is, and much lower than it really will be. And I like the analogy, it will be close to the height of 2 electric poles. I decided to have my own engineer look at the lengthy report I received from the city with a letter sent from Mr. Albritton. I like attorneys and respect his work. He's representing his client very well, but not representing the true situation here, in my opinion. So I decided if they were going to have their own analysis and their selected drive routes, I would have my engineer on my staff at Rizzic Engineering take a look at this. He's a young man, Alejandro, on our staff. He analyzed it in a day and said, "Hey, Nancy, you need to bring up these things." He could not attend tonight. He called to my attention that some of our service, as mentioned here earlier, is coming from Lucerne. Some of it's coming from Middletown. And there's always going to be an overlap, in his opinion, no matter where you site a new cell phone tower. Scotts Valley has approximately a 1.6 mile coverage. Why not upgrade it a half a mile and you'll reach the lake? And it'll take care of the coverage that Verizon is claiming on the east side. Well, I've spent several days driving around town with my Verizon cell phone, and I get the same signal at the schools as I get out at my home on Lakeshore Boulevard and the streets adjacent to the lake. If the gentleman had a drop in his cell phone service today, it was probably a fluke. I just happened to have one call drop 4 times when I was talking to my attorney about this cell phone situation from a place that I'd often used it, and another 4 times when I was talking to Leah Passantino, a person that would like to have it on her property. I found that very interesting, and my husband said, "Nancy, you're paranoid over this thing." Well, I'm not paranoid because I cooked for those fishermen in Alaska on a supposed vacation, 3 meals a day, cleaned fish every night, came back from up there a day early to see someone in Sacramento. And on the airplane, I saw about iPhones, Apple's iPhone, a wristwatch. And I decided, oh, I think I'll go in that store. And because I read about it on the last air, and I went out in there and I said to the young man, "Gee, I like that black one with the gold trim." He said, "Lady, that's $15,000. I said, "Oh no, I can't have that." I said, "What else have you got?" I bought this one for $249, and it was like sweet revenge for all that cooking I did and all those fish I cleaned. And he said, "What is your Verizon password?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know if I want to give it to you. I'm in trouble with Verizon right now." And he said, "Well, tell me what your situation was." And I told him, he said, "Well, I used to work for a major cell phone carrier, and I guarantee you're probably right. You're probably getting monitored because they know where you are and what you're doing." So I end with that. Please make a decision. Let me get some sleep at night, and let me know that my shopping center and the merchants there are not going to be put out of business. And, whoops, I dropped the whole thing. I hope it's the last time I have to refer to it. And if Verizon wants to improve their service, I think they should make a new application and closely look at some other sites. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nancy.
So the main point being, why not, oh, I left out one thing. Why not up the Lucerne output? Why not up the Scotts Valley output enough to cover the supposed area where there's a problem? I did not find a problem at school. Maybe when you got every kid in the school using their cell phone during their lunch hour, it would be fine. And the other point was, why not eliminate the Scotts Valley Tower, put one on 11th Street with enough output to cover everything? Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. There's quite a few questions there, so Ms. Blocker, Ms. Albritton.
Thank you. I actually appreciate you have a very colorful audience, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Believe it or not.
You should see it when we're raising rates.
Yeah. I've presented in Berkeley, and San Jose, and Sanford. It's a pretty hot place. San Francisco. Yeah, this is actually important. I'm going to try and address some of the quick questions very quickly. I think our engineer is at the edge of his seat to answer some of the questions, and I'll let him come up. Water was mentioned, and the effect of the lake, and you heard the effect of the lake. What the lake does is it causes a signal to skip, and that's why we're getting signal from 17 miles away from Canocti, where one of our Middletown sites is. And that's the problem of putting a site next to a lake, is the signal. The Bay Area, we have a particular problem with sites in the East Bay skipping over to San Francisco or Marin County, so that's why you don't do that. But Ben will explain that a little more carefully. There was discussion of our text message. I think our text message is very clear. We give you the actual letter, we give you the actual text message that we used, we sent out to the zip code here, and it does describe the exact location of where the pole was placed and what it is, and so I think it speaks for itself. And as council members, you do not make your decision based on the number of people that come up and speak. I know that. But you had 10 speakers come up and speak in opposition to the facility tonight. We had 10 opponents. We got that many opponents in our text message, and we reported it. But we also had 281 people who said that they were looking for a better service, and they're obviously not here tonight. I have to comment, there was a question about the bill. No, the bill does not go up when we put up a cell tower. In fact, what you heard tonight was the example of what the FCC and the federal government has tried to do in the United States, and that is to have a competitive cell phone network, and they actually have prevented mergers of companies. They've prevented AT&T from merging with T-Mobile because they wanted to maintain enough carriers, four carriers, so that there's a competitive market, and so that the rates remain competitive as opposed to being monopolistic, perhaps like your cable company. Of the 10 speakers that spoke, over half spoke about their concerns about RF emissions, and I think that is an underlying issue, obviously, that's here as a concern. We've provided information to show that the site absolutely complies with the FCC guidelines. In fact, it's far below the FCC guidelines. One of the benefits of a tall tower is that the emissions are so remote, so high, so far away from the microwave oven, as somebody mentioned, that they're a small fraction of the permitted emissions on the ground or anywhere nearby. In fact, the FCC gives a pass for environmental assessment of any tower where the antennas are higher than 10 meters, or 33 feet, because of that fact. So the emissions from this tower are way up in the air. They go out in a pattern like a lighthouse. It's a flat horizontal beam, and its distance and extremely low and fully within FCC guidelines. We have on the survey in the plans, there's a 72-foot tree shown on the plans not far from where the proposed tree is to be located. There's also a 56-foot tree. So there are tall trees. They're not immediately adjacent to this tree, but if you look around Lakeport, there tend to be individual trees, and we think, in fact, that it is compatible. Our first look was at a co-location. We prefer to go to co-locations, but it was not in the area that we needed to serve, and that's why it was not selected. I mentioned that we have a letter from the sheriff supporting the service. A majority of public safety providers and first responders in the state of California use Verizon Wireless Network. That's because it is the most reliable network. It is, and it's recognized for that. For the laptops that are used in the patrol cars for fingerprinting or identifying felons, convicted felons. And we have many letters from many public safety agencies commenting on the importance of the network and the importance of the speed of the network, being able to identify somebody when they're sitting in a car in front of them. Apologize. I will let Ben speak to the network design, and they've already done everything they can with the existing sites to provide service, to expand service. I want to say that if we look at the courthouse, which certainly is something that would make sense, it's going to require a lease from you. And so we would like some kind of suggestion that perhaps that you will be willing to obviously negotiate reasonably a lease if in fact that's an option. Finally, and I'm sure I missed a point or two, there was a suggestion of third-party review. We are absolutely not afraid of third-party review. We think that third-party review will confirm our analysis. Certainly it's possible 18 months after we've been looking for a site that a landlord will, that circumstances will change for the landlord. That is hard for us to follow up on every site, but we've indicated a willingness to do that. There was I believe the discussion of small cells. I think then also there's a reason we're not doing that. I'm currently in the process of putting a 400 facility small cell network in San Francisco. These are facilities on utility poles and light standards, and that's to meet the capacity demands of San Francisco. Those small cell networks are designed for that kind of capacity requirements and don't make sense here. And I can tell you that I've gone through 30 protest hearings for people who did not want a small cell facility in front of their property. Same kind of concern, infrastructure that's immediately adjacent to public infrastructure that's immediately adjacent to immediate neighbors are always going to have something more of impact than the overall benefit to the community. So I'll turn it over to Ben, I think, and then I will come back to answer any other questions that you might have. Ben, did you want to address some of those?
Yes. So part of my analysis was actually, investigating a small cell network here in downtown Lakeport. One of the reasons why I alluded to not making that feasible option has to do a lot with the existing infrastructure here in the city. Requires an extensive fiber optic network to interconnect all those small cells together, as well as connect all those small cells back to the wide area network. And that's just not existent here in Lakeport, unfortunately. Not to mention, I would have to identify 12, well, I have identified 12 poles that could potentially be used, but I can't comment whether they're actually feasible or not, because I'm not the pole owner, obviously, so I can't do a structural analysis on it, which is why I made or ruled out the idea of a small cell network here for Lakeport. If I can address also another concern, the idea of sort of beefing up cell sites, such as Lucerne or the one in Middletown, which is 17 miles away, serving here across the lake. If I can make a small analogy of, okay, if you can imagine yourself sort of in a dark room, and you've got people inside the room, scattered around the room, where would be the best place to put the light bulb? In the center, where you can get equal light everywhere, right? You wouldn't want to put the light bulb at one particular side of the room because the light wouldn't be able to propagate to the, it wouldn't propagate as fully to the other side. So if I can make that analogy, I'll kind of liken it to that sort of thing. And I think that's about it.
I think there was a question about the pole being taller or shorter on 11th Street, or taking that, or something to do with the one on Scotts Valley. Did you make a note of that?
Oh, sure. The existing pole, well, in order to go through a process of decommissioning an old site, decommissioning an existing site, and potentially putting up a new one, there would be a gap or a time frame where service is cut off. And that's something that we definitely do not want to do. Then essentially there would be a period of no service. So decomming the existing site is not something that is in the best interest.
I think Mr. Albrecht wanted to finish, and then
I know,
we'll
did you,
ask our questions.
let me ask you to rephrase. Could you state the question is to take down a facility and rebuild the network?
I don't remember exactly. I
Okay.
just know somebody asked something about, what was it, making it,
To make that whole taller. so
make
that
it
they get,
taller?
Better reception. Right.
Since Verizon Wireless does not own the tower, I cannot comment on that.
Where are we?
But my
This is
question was
Scott.
taller on 11th.
So I think her question was the 11th Street site, if you made it taller, would it not compete with the Scotts Valley?
Adjusting the height would be.
They're asking if you use that site instead and made it even taller, would that alleviate the issue of it competing with the Scotts Valley?
So if I made the existing or our proposed facility taller, would it compete?
Is this in
No.
Pasatino? The Pasatino?
Right.
The Pasatino.
They asked if you used the Pasatino property and made it a taller facility there, would that alleviate the problem of competing with the Scotts Valley?
No, it would not, just because of the proximity of the two cell sites.
Thank you.
Yeah, if anything, it would make things worse because the taller site then interferes with other sites in the distance. So the height of the sites is for the sprinkler analogy again, I'm afraid. If you made a really tall sprinkler, it's going to start interfering with the whole network. So the heights of the towers are, I mean, when you start, when I started this 30 years ago, they thought that they would serve the entire Bay Area with 28 cell sites, which of course now there are 1,000. And all the sites were tall. Sutro Tower, Mount Diablo, Mount Tamalpais. But as the network matures, the sites are actually brought down. The miracle of cellular is that you can reuse the same frequency over and over again by having a honeycomb network where you use one frequency and then one cell over to use that same frequency over again. There actually were cell phones in the early 80s and before that, but there was only one antenna in San Francisco, so 80 people had a cell phone, and you had to be pretty rich to have one. So that's why you wouldn't increase the height. You also wouldn't increase the power. The problem with the site that's on the other side of Highway 29 is that it has run out of capacity. And we included charts in our document that we provided to you earlier showing the amount of cell phones that the tower can talk to at one time and versus the demand for the number of phones that are trying to talk to the tower. And that's been exceeded. So it can't, no matter how many watts are blasted out of that tower, it can't serve any more calls. And that's why we need to split the cell, split the area, create another honeycomb, reuse different frequency, and add capacity to the whole network so that more tablets, more phones, more watches can connect to the cellular network. I hope that's
I think you answered your question.
I take it back. I will not rent the court tower from you.
You can pay us.
We'd love to.
We'll accept the money.
Deal.
I was politely informed that you don't own it. I take that back. The one issue that my colleague noted that I didn't address was property values. Property values has come up quite a bit. People found that was a good, when they were concerned about RF, that they could raise property values. And there are two federal court cases, 2003, AT&T versus Carlsbad and Verizon Wireless versus Madera County, where decisions were overturned that were based on property values because it's seen as a proxy for people's fear about RF issues. If there's any effect on property values, it would be aesthetics, but then we'd be talking about aesthetics. We're going to talk about what the facility looks like and not the property values. So I don't know if you have further questions from us. I truly mean it that Verizon Wireless doesn't come to antagonize the community and try to create havoc in locating these facilities. At the same time, I think you probably recognize the difficulty in installing these kinds of facilities in a community in order to provide service. We have to have height, we have to have antennas, and wireless technology. It does a tremendous service. We do what we can we followed all the rules. We do comply with the code as far as we're within a commercial area, bounded only by one residential property, and in a camouflage situation to try and minimize, not eliminate, but minimize the aesthetics. We are anxious to get this site built because our network is currently over capacity here. We are willing to take a step back and look at the courthouse property and even talk to Mr. Scott if that's what it takes. We're also willing to have all of our analysis reviewed by third-party engineers, or one of the requirements is Verizon Wireless requires that any third-party review be conducted by a California registered professional engineer. There are organizations that will review and provide you an answer that your community wants rather than the real answer, but we stand by our engineering. And I think unless you've got other questions, that wraps it up. Yes?
The one question that, the survey, you brought up the fact that there was a lot more people that responded positively to the inquiry whether they would like better service, like we would want better service.
I asked you to read the text message.
Yeah. Well, no, the question that I was going to ask was, did you ever give any thought to the fact that maybe you might, because I understand I'm not that savvy, but you can attach a photograph to that. And that wasn't done, so that they could actually see the depiction, the alleged depiction. That wasn't done.
Yeah, there are a couple of things. One, if you read the message, it says, do you support approved Verizon Wireless service in Lakeport? And it says, send us a message if you would support, and I don't remember the exact language, I think it's a tree pole, and it gives the address of where it is. And many of the messages, if you look at it, say, I support the tree pole.
Yeah, I know, and
so with respect to a photograph, in some campaigns, we will have a web page associated with it, where people can look up the web page. We have not been successful in sending an image with the text message. This may surprise you, but the majority of text messages, most customers do not want to receive a text message, and so they have opted out of receiving a text message. And then there are also, we get many text message backs that are data from the network for some reason or other, the number's not functioning or has the text was reused or any number of things. And that ratio goes up very high when we add an image. So we do not add an image, we just provide the information. And then we say at the very end, or for more info. So people can contact us and we will generally send them the report that we prepared.
Because I think
they ask for more information, then we can provide it to them.
The biggest problem one of the reasons that we've supported the appeal is because of the fact that the aesthetic appreciation of the neighbors and all the people that are associated with this living on or nearby or on properties nearby have to do with aesthetics. And I know that I was driving down 101 at 55, 65 miles an hour, and because my endoplasmic reticulum is like dialed into these little cell tower things, I saw one out of the corner of my eye going 65 miles an hour, 60, whatever. I was not speeding, Chief. And I noticed it, and I made a point to take a photograph of it. I was in Las Vegas the other day, and I was going...
But you weren't texting while you were driving.
No, and I was driving, and in the middle of Las Vegas, there was a monopine tree next to a resort. And I sent it to the city manager because it was like, wow, but it is so unrealistic. And I know that there's been some massive improvements, but the renderings is what we call them, the renderings. Nancy used that term, and I like that because we really don't know what it looks like really. And the one that I saw in Santa Rosa, the one I saw across the street from the resort, a pine tree in Las Vegas, I guess there must be other ones around, I'm sure, otherwise they wouldn't do it. But that's what really scares me, because aesthetically, these things don't look that much more like a tree than, any other bush that's like 2 feet tall. This could be construed as a tree, but it's not, but it kind of looks like one, but it has those little feelers in it that are sticking out. That whole aesthetic thing is a problem, and when you send out a text message, what do you think about this, and they don't want a text message that has a photograph because it takes too much memory or gigabytes. But that's a real problem with me, is because these people have to live with that. And when I first saw it, I thought, hey, that's great, but does it really look like that? Now that I've seen them, they don't look that good at all to me. They really don't. I mean, the depiction looks good. It really does look pretty good. I'll give you credit for that. But I would be terrified if I approved this and I saw it and it looked like the one in Vegas. And I think Jenny said that it's 60 feet, but then we put an extra 8 feet on there. They do, that depiction looks really good, but what does it really look like? Because the other two were really sorry looking things. And then when Nancy brought in all the sprigs that she found all over the ground, I didn't do that much, but falling off, and I don't even know if they were a year old or 5 years old, but there's all these sprigs and falling on the ground. I'm like, man, I got a real problem with that whole thing, hiding that thing. It's got to be a better way, like on the courthouse or something.
I encourage you to, because the fake tree technology has been around for a long time. It's been around for a long time. And the early trees were not that good. I agree with you 100%. But the current trees are a vast improvement. And we can give you some addresses of current trees to see what they look like. And they are maintained, and there are better materials, and there's bark color and pine color. The antennas themselves have an actual sock on them that has needles on it, so that the antenna is actually blended into the tree. Do they look exactly like a tree? No, but they're pretty good. And I think part of the problem is that over time, the older trees, they were a new idea back then, and they were not as well constructed, but they are far better constructed today. And there used to be no competition on who you bought them from. Now there are a number of companies that are producing them, and they are an improvement. Now I've heard I was pleased to hear that historically there were water tanks in Lakeport. The benefit of it, something like a clock tower or a water tank or something like that, is that it really doesn't look like you don't see any antennas. You could honestly think that it's a water tank. The trees, if you look hard, you're going to see the antennas in the socks themselves. But you would be amazed. I know you saw that one going down the freeway, but you probably aren't aware that there's probably one every mile that you don't see. And in Las Vegas, I can't help myself. I will help myself because say what's in Las Vegas. But I can't speak for that one. I can tell you that I have had jurisdictions that Davis, California wanted us to put a bicycle on top of the cell tower. That's their, what they wanted. If they had one design, they had us look at to put a gecko on a cell tower. So there are jurisdictions that's what they want. So we try and provide the least intrusive means based on your code and your general plan. So if we haven't already done so, we can give you some physical addresses of places to go where there are extremely good cell towers. The one I passed today that I was involved in defending the county of Sonoma, is on the Cotati grade on 101 on Railroad Avenue. And if you go by that way, look around and see if you can see the cell tower. I understand the aesthetic concern, and again, we do what we can to address that. It is a cell tower, and we think we do a pretty good job.
More questions? Mr. Aldred or Mr. Smith? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
All right, we appreciate your time very much.
Thank you. Well, I guess at this point, we know what our options are, but I get Mr. Albritton, if there was a scenario to look at, and I know that unfortunately all this communication is going to happen in the duration of a meeting, but what would that entail from the provider then to even consider to looking at that facility if in fact the county is willing?
Once he answers that, I have a beating that question maybe for Kevin.
I was just asking Ed Godfrey, who's one of the senior an executive at Forest Marley. He says he thinks that we would need 90 days to talk to the courthouse, do the structural analyses on the roof, figure out what other antennas are on the building, whether we can get the appropriate azimuths on the building given the existing antennas that are there now, and whether there be location for our equipment and power, fiber optic cabling, all of those. There's many issues that have to be reviewed to see if that's viable. And then in addition to we were talking about the propagation mapping and possible constant wave testing.
And
it's not cheap.
David, something like that were to take place, are we in jeopardy at some point now of time constraints from ourselves because of the appeal and the planning commission
Well,
decision?
we have a shot clock, so-called shot clock that requires the city to make a determination on the use permit application within a certain period of time. And we've already run up against that deadline, and we've extended it through stipulation with Verizon. I would assume that they would be willing to extend it to continue the hearing. Another option, would be to uphold the appeal, deny the use permit for the monopine, and ask them to look into the courthouse, because it would be a new site, and I don't just talk to Kevin about what that would entail.
That was going to be my
The
question.
city has, the council has authority to modify use permits on an appeal. The difficulty comes about when we're talking about an entirely new location with a completely new design. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to speak to that. It may be the easiest thing for the city to have that be a new application. So essentially, denial of this particular location, and then without prejudice, so to speak, for a new application at a new location. That would be one option.
Yes.
The other one would be to give them 90 days and do this again, in which case Verizon will have had 90 more days to look at the courthouse and to provide additional engineering reports and to update their alternative analysis. And then we would be here again doing something similar after Verizon had 90 more days to work up their application. So I don't know, Kevin, if you want to comment on those options with respect to a new site.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I applaud Verizon for bringing alternative designs in, but there is some difficulty, as I'm sure the council's aware, with the first packet. When you've got the planning commission packet, the application is probably about that thick. All we have in regards tonight for the water tower design is 2 pages of photo simulation. So, I mean, there are a lot of questions that normally would get vetted through our department, through a circulation to other city agencies, other county agencies who may have jurisdiction. So, I mean, there is a lot that goes into it. So you guys, as David said, you certainly have the ability to go about modifying those permits. But if we start talking about different sites, different designs, I'm not all that confident in being able to make appropriate conditions for you guys to approve without physically seeing, where that is on the site. Does it meet setbacks? What kind of materials are being used? What kind of colors? Those are normally things that your planning commission, kind of vets for you. And that was the process we went through for the monopine site. So that would be my suggestion, is if there is a new application, new design, a new site to look at, it's probably best to take that back through the standard review process and what normally would go through with an application. And granted, you guys do have the ability to modify it if you feel that's not necessary.
That was exactly my question, Kevin.
So if I could speak to that just for a moment. If in fact you decided that you wanted a clock tower, then certainly we would anticipate going back to the planning commission, take a look at that, and then looking at all the different drawings and so forth, and getting a design review from them. We have very much tried to work cooperatively with the city. The federal law says that you're supposed to make a decision within 150 days, plus the time it takes to respond to a request for more information, and we've extended that period of time because we were trying to work with the city. The difficulty in denying and moving to a new application is that gives me 30 days, a 30-day statute of limitations to file a lawsuit against the city. And that's what we would rather avoid in the interim. If we're going to look at an alternative design, would be to suspend essentially this application, let us look at the alternative location, and then and then come back without having finalized this one. So that would be the direction that we would prefer. You can always, have both processes going on at the same time, but it seems, I would think, more efficient to let us take a look and come back. And if necessary, go back to the, and it may be we need, if it turns out the courthouse is going to work out, that we will apply. I would expect that we would apply and make sure that that actually happens indeed before we finally look through this application. And in any case, before another application is approved, I have that timeline that I have to deal with in terms of the statute of limitation, 30 days that's imposed by the federal law with respect to our actions. If we don't act within 30 days, then we're barred from taking that action. And we would agree to extend the shot clock for the so-called shot clock.
So if we extended it and then they decided the courthouse would work, could we decide then to send it back to planning?
Yeah, it sounds like Verizon would withdraw their application
At that time.
for the one on High Street and then submit to the planning department. And correct if I'm wrong, Mr. Walker.
Well, actually, what we would do is recommend that we extend off into the future and actually leave this application to see if the courthouse actually was approved.
That's what we're saying. So
If the courthouse
the
was, if we
courthouse-
apply, we go through the whole process, and the courthouse is denied because the neighbors of the courthouse, I don't know, whatever, then we would want to come back to this application. And so that's generally what we do, is we just leave an application pending, we extend the shot clock deadlines or waive any rights for processing the application or any requirements under your code for processing within a period of time, and move forward with the other application to fruition. That's generally what we do. It's a lot of this paperwork.
Can I help you for a second?
I'm sorry that the public hearing's already closed. I'm sure that our city attorney has us covered in the legal department.
He doesn't understand what you guys are talking about. Those towers up there don't have any city permits. Do they have city permits, Kevin?
No, they don't have any permits. I was going to
Oh, thank you. So there's no,
bring that up.
it's all county?
The county buildings are exempt from the city zoning and building ordinance.
Okay. Well, then all the more reason that we would not withdraw this application while we're going to the
So
county.
everything would go through the county at that point.
Yeah. But thank you. I'm
Thanks, Bob.
familiar with
That's
the
a good point. Thanks, Kevin.
I'll write him a check.
The other point would just be to make that, there are tolling agreements that entities can enter into with respect to statute of limitations. Those are also things like the shot clock that can be negotiated between two parties to allow someone who has a deadline to file a lawsuit to wait some time before they have to do that. So they don't lose their ability to file a lawsuit for a certain amount of time based on an agreement. So that's another option that exists. Were the council to decide to deny this use permit, but wanted to continue discussions, negotiations with Verizon regarding the other application or whatnot, that's an opportunity.
In effect, we could waive the 30-day.
And I don't have authority to say whether I could do that.
Right, I mean, that has to be mutual, just like the shot clock, that has to be a mutual agreement.
I would have to talk to Bryce Morales.
Any more questions for Mr. Albrecht?
No, Paul, you weren't at the last meeting, so.
No.
Legally, you won't like my opinion because I'm mostly opposed to this for aesthetics. I'll even probably make Mr. Bob Bridges upset when he knows that I was on the planning commission that turned down the location that was to the north of the courthouse for another carrier, for another fake tree. The problem with that is you're not looking at a tree from 200 yards away. You're looking at it from a block and a half of downtown. That was the reason that I was opposed to that location. I couldn't see walking downtown and looking up the hill at a huge fake tree a block and a half from your main street. I think the other thing aesthetically is that you're looking at Hartley, 20th, and High Street. The whole end of town, unless they're heading north, they dump out through there. It's one of the highest traffic areas in the city on that part of town. Everybody drives through there. Everybody sees it. Again, they're not going to be looking at it from several thousands of yards away, several hundreds of yards away. They're going to be driving by it, fairly close in proximity. That's was my opposition at the last meeting. It's going to look like a big fake tree. You want to put your name for all time on a big fake tree in a very, very visible area. I think you've done a very good job tonight.
I understand your point. It is, at least the street level is screened by the adjacent building, so you don't see the equipment area at the bottom of the tree. But it is hard to hide a tree. That's why one of the reasons we encourage the water tower is still at 60 feet, but it's not 72. And maybe there is a design that makes sense. We put water tanks in Fillmore, California, and others where we've got an elegant description of the name of the town, and it's become a focal point. It's hard to believe, but it's true. Next to the railway and elsewhere. So perhaps there's a design that makes sense. But I understand.
Anything further? Thank you. Council members, council, further comments?
Well, I have this Robert gentleman that just cut out here and talking about not in my backyard. I can see that no matter where you put it, with very few exceptions, there's going to be people that are going to be either up the street, down the street, or looking over the courthouse saying, well, now they ruined my view. There's always going to be issues with that kind of thing. And so I do believe that we need to move forward and we need to have progress. We need to have, good cell phone coverage and capacity and all that stuff. And, I just wish there was some way to make this thing look aesthetically pleasing to the people in the neighborhood. I don't know that that's going to happen. I would like to think that we could move it to where the other ones are, take a shot at it, and if that works, then everybody could be happy. We could get the capacity, we could get the range, we could get all these things taken care of. As I said originally, when I looked at the depictions, I thought, hey, this doesn't look so bad. The planning commission's all in favor. And then when I heard everybody, in an uproar, I go, well, I wouldn't want it right in front of my front window or anywhere down the street, maybe, and driving by all day long. So anyway, I'm not sure that I feel comfortable that all of the other sites have been properly, investigated, and like they're casually, they weren't home, so I didn't call them back, I didn't pick up the phone, and that kind of thing. So I just don't.
Folks, if you could please.
I feel that maybe, because I don't know that they found out about this courthouse thing. It sounds like Kevin said in defense of them, they just found out that maybe this is an option. And if it is, I wouldn't have any problem, postponing this kind of agony over something that, we want it, but we don't want it there, for any amount of particular time, because I want to make the right decision at the right time. And I don't care if it's today or 90 days out. I want to make sure the right decision for the carrier and for the people that need the service. And so if we need to give them more time, there's a way to do that so that we can find a solution, because, they've done tons of work, spent tons of money, and, they deserve to get some kind of positive outcome sometime, somewhere. But I'm not real happy about the where right now. I want to find a different where. And if the courthouse works and we can find that, if it takes 90 days more, I don't have a problem with that. And if it's legally allowable, and then once we figure it out, then we can drop, they can pull out the other one and we'll put the new one on, and then we can move forward on this. Because this is really a difficult issue for me. Because we need the infrastructure, we need the service. But, we don't need to have everybody all upset and want to move out of town and move back to LA, water skiing at the reservoir somewhere else. I don't think all that. So I would like to get a solution that works for everybody. And they've done a lot of work and they've done a great job. And I do think they care. And there's some money involved, but it's kind of how I feel it. I'm just not sure that they've done all the due diligence on that particular location and maybe didn't have the opportunity. So maybe if there's a way we can do that, work that out, and then come back and talk about it later, rather than making a bad decision or running them off or whatever.
Councilmember Spillman. Thoughts? Councilmember Turner.
From my understanding, from what we've heard so far, and from the research that I've done, both reading the packet regarding the Planning Commission's process, as well as speaking to staff subsequently, I do think that the planning commission did do proper due diligence, and I think that their decision was sound. I also appreciate Nancy bringing this appeal forward because it's given us the opportunity as a council to consider the aesthetics, which I find highly compelling. It is, I agree with Kenny that this is somebody's front yard, so it's not quite the same as driving by on a freeway and having things out of your peripheral vision that, you know, if you're not Kenny, you may not see. So I do find the aesthetics of high value as far as the position goes. It's also given us the opportunity to more broadly understand Verizon's point of view, because I'm sure nobody, well, for the large part, we need the increased service. The data demands is increasing, I agree with that. The conversations that I have had with our local law enforcement has stressed the importance of a more complete network. And as I think I've mentioned at previous council meetings, the briefing that I went to on the 4th of July where we had a mutual aid preparation for our largest tourist day of the year, one of the things that was brought up was a person that they knew meant to do harm in this county that they were trying to track to get him off the streets so he would not be a direct security threat to all of our tourists and all of our residents. And they were only able to track him sketchily because of the spotty cell phone coverage that we did have. So I highly weigh the value of an increased coverage in our area, both for law enforcement, for public safety, as well as for private use, business use, you know, all the countless ways that cell phone towers are important to our daily lives. I don't have fear of going to court, but I want to make sure that if we get to that point, our position is well vetted and solid. And so I agree with Kenny, if we can continue it, and now I know that that's a frustrating option because these people want us to move on, and I agree it would be nice to move on, but this is so vital, this is such an important decision that I fully support a continuance of the 90 days. Verizon is amenable to that in order to fully flesh out this least intrusive option. I want to know that when we do make the decision whether or not to uphold Nancy's appeal, that we are doing so with the most information we possibly can. Because for me, I think that that would give us a strong basis, and I would feel confident moving forward into whatever arena that may mean after our decision. So I support it.
Pro Tem?
I would agree, and I thought Councilmember Carlette said it very well. And it's disappointing that Verizon didn't already look further into the courthouse, but there's no reason they can't do it now. So, much better location than in someone's backyard.
Work with us, Verizon.
So the consensus being then, I mean, I guess we'll just look at the elephant in the room. That, if negotiations then fail at the courthouse or something just doesn't work, or even the propagation, they just can't cover the gap, we're still sitting in the exact same spot. I mean, at this point, I don't know how council feels, but I mean, for me personally, Verizon hasn't proven to me through their research and findings that is the least intrusive position. But I am definitely pro having all of our coverage and resources available to all of our citizens and law enforcement, first responders. So, I definitely think we need the service. But personally, for myself, it has not been proven to me by Verizon that is the least intrusive. And I'm not afraid of a lawsuit. And I mean, if that were to come to pass, then we'd have another discussion with our legal team and take that path. But that doesn't scare me. So I guess my concern is that at this point, would there be a negative to approving the appeal, denying the use permit for that location? But then working with Verizon's legal team to extend a potential claim date of 30 days. And granted, I know that Paul mentioned that he can't make that decision. He's talked to Verizon's legal department to see if they'd be interested. So I know there's some risk there as well. But I mean, ultimately, if the courthouse site doesn't work, and that's the only thing they look at, in my opinion, I still don't feel that Verizon has done their due diligence to prove to me that that's the least intrusive spot at 1875 North High, so I wouldn't be able to support that site if the courthouse was.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Then we move back.
If there's a larger blanket, I mean, Verizon's, they had their 60 days. They did some additional work. I understand that the continuous signal item they were talking about can be expensive and hard to set up, but in my mind, that just seems like the natural thing to do from locations. But you guys feel free to jump in. I'm not this.
I'm kind of, I'm right on board with you there. It really comes down to, are we going to put a big giant tree at the High Street location as far as this goes? I mean, I understand that they've had time to look at this stuff and look at alternative locations. I don't know that due diligence has been shown to this point with the additional time shown.
I think that what we have done is that we've shown our resolve in this, and I think that most of us, it seems that the consensus is if they're going to insist on this and they're not going to do additional due diligence and they're not going to find other locations, not other designs, but other locations, then the appeal will be upheld and that will be the end of it. And but what I'm trying to do is avoid this. The lawsuit thing doesn't, I think that Kevin and staff has done a great job putting our case. David has explained the different options and the possibilities, and we haven't gone out and sued anybody for 10 years. But I really think that they do want to solve this problem, and now I think they realize this option is not on the table. I think that's kind of what I hope to do. So, 90 days when they come back, that will not be the one that they're pushing because they know what the outcome will be. At least that's the feeling I get from you.
It's the least confrontational way.
That's what I'm saying. Rather than throw it all, everything they've done down, and give them the 90 days and see if we can do it. And then when everything looks good, they can withdraw the other one after the other one's been approved, and it's all good. Everybody gets what they want. We get better service. They get their tower, but they don't get it where they want it now because we are not going to go there.
Okay.
Yay!
Then why leave it on the table?
Because it's the least confrontational option.
Yeah, there's an issue. If Mr. Albrighton right now could say that we would be amicable at this very moment to waive the 30-day along with the city,
That would be different.
that would be different. But he can't make that decision right now. So there's a legal team that's going to get involved. And then if they say no, well, I mean, then we're back at the, then it puts them into a corner to litigate, which is understandable. In the long run, David, I mean, really, if we extend the timeout and a continuance, I mean, I know that from a legal standpoint, if it was going to become adversarial, that they could bolster their, they have more time to prepare, but in reality, it's Verizon, and I imagine that their legal team moves relatively quickly. And I don't know if they only had, 30 days to file a lawsuit is a lot different than when it's going to happen in federal court in San Francisco. So
30 days is a very short statute.
Sure.
And if the council were going to deny today the use permit, then they've got three choices. One, let it go and look into other sites. Two would be to bring a lawsuit. They could still look at other sites in the meantime just to make sure that they've met their filing deadline. And three would be to try to negotiate with the city some kind of tolling agreement that would allow them to maintain the right to bring the litigation, but to do so at a later date. With a 90-day continuance, they will maintain this application open so that there's no final decision, so they don't have to bring a lawsuit. But they'll also have 90 days to analyze other alternatives and try to bolster their record in the event that their that they come back and decide that, once again, they think there are no other means of filling this reported gap. So, at which point, we'd have the same decision, the council would have the same decision.
Sit before us as we do right now.
But alternatively, it's possible, as Councilmember Parlett mentioned, that they find that the courthouse site would work for them, and it sounds like they would still be inclined to keep this application open in the event that fell through for some reason, in which case we'd be back here making this, the council would be here making the same decision. And they would have shown that they tried an alternative site that ended up not being feasible, which would again bolster their record. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, it does. And you know, with the continuance, I mean, ultimately what I'd like to see is for, you know, Verizon and the city of Lakeport, including its citizens, to proceed forward in a partnership. And, you know, I think that produces the best results until that partnership can no longer happen, because, you know, at some point, a line in the sand is going to get drawn. And so, you know, if that could happen, you know, I think that maybe that we step up our efforts. They will continue to work. I mean, they've heard all the discussion here from council. Obviously, they're going to have to talk to an entirely different entity, so that will be out of our hands. But, you know, one of my fears is even with just outright denial, without making sure that we've done our due diligence to look at all options, as Councilmember Parlett said on the table, and Councilmember Turner, is, you know, the future of companies that are service companies that come into the city of Lakeport that may choose not to for coverage issues. And I mean, that's hypothetical, obviously, but anyhow, I mean, I would support, if it's the will of the council, I would support a continuance aspect, you know, with direction that the courthouse or the jail portion of the courthouse be looked at, and give that an adequate amount of time.
Well, we have two locations. One's the roof of the courthouse and one is the jail, is my understanding.
The entire courthouse facility.
Yeah, to confer with the county regarding the facility space agreement.
With that being said, if there's anything else, Pro Tem, do you have something else to add?
I don't think so.
Well, there's a suggested motion, but if we're going to do a continued style motion, then we probably need to work that, figure out how we're going to do that, and then some time date issues. And Mr. Albritton, at least at this point, 90 days be sufficient. I mean, I know there's no target. I mean, it's impossible to, you know, because we're dealing with a party that's not here right now. So, but if we were to move in that direction, is that at least at this point a substantial amount of time to?
I asked my client, and they said yes. You know, in a perfect world, we'll be moving forward with the county, and in 90 days we'll say, look, it's looking good, and we maybe push it out further to say, let us finish and get it done with the county. So maybe it won't come back, and maybe there'll be some other, but you understand our position. I appreciate your deliberation.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, with that, David.
Mr. Mayor, I'm the appellant. Do I get a chance to speak, or are they the only ones that get to speak at this hearing?
Nancy, come on up.
Thank you.
I've offered you multiple times.
As you can probably guess, I'm getting pretty upset. You add another 3 months. It's been since May. I've had this hanging over my head. I lost a major retailer because I had signs out, please no cell phone tower here. I have 3 leases pending, and I was hoping tonight this would be resolved. Who's going to pay the thousands of dollars per month in lease revenue to me for the loss of my shopping center? Where are my rights in this thing? If they haven't gotten it done in 60 days, why do they need 90 days? Give them 30 days at the most. That's plenty. They haven't done anything that I can see in 60 days except cram this down our throats. Please, have some, what are my rights? Mr. Attorney and Mr. Planning Director, I'd like to hear. I appealed this in May. Thank you.
her rights.
I mean, she had the right to appeal, and that's what she's done. The code allows the council to continue hearings, and any future hearing would obviously involve the appellant in 90 days. So she would have the opportunity to appear and present evidence at that hearing as well.
All right, what's the pleasure of the council? Do we have to, are we all in consensus at least this point for a continuance?
Yes.
Okay.
I am for.
I am.
Okay.
I am not.
Well, it looks like there's going to be enough, at least for a motion for continuance. So we should at least go that direction and see who carries the vote. So if we need to put that together, David, how should that be?
You can
formatted?
you can simply move to grant a 90-day continuance to.
Come on, you guys.
try to adapt the
Come on.
law.
Just
Get it done.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've had your opportunity to speak, and I please ask you to give our city attorney and us the same respect that we gave you while you were speaking. Thank you.
And then if you wanted to include any conditions in terms of, I believe last time the motion specifically said, for the purpose of evaluating alternative designs and locations. So if you wanted to say that you'd move for a 90-day continuance for the purpose of evaluating alternative locations only, that would work.
Yeah, I think that might accomplish it, because that way they know that it's not going to be at least not without the lawsuit. In other words, it's not going to be in their backyard, because.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Mr. Mayor, last time also we set a date, time, and certain as well. You may want to consider.
Oh, no.
You know, Nancy, come back up before we do this. I think there's some confusion on the direction that we're taking. You know, I know you have tenants, potential tenants for the building, but how this motion is going to be presented, whether or not it passes, you know, ultimately is going to be such that I think you've heard from this council that we're not going to support the location.
But you've said that before, and here we are again with another continuance. I'd like to ask Verizon, can they get it done in 30 days? Why don't you ask them that before you decide on the 90?
Well, they've already told us they need 90. Yes.
I didn't hear that.
Mr. Paul Albrighton stated earlier in the evening that they would need 90 days when they're asked a direct question to look at the courthouse or the jail section of the courthouse facility.
I brought up the courthouse, once again, I'll say, in June, and they have done nothing on that. And this is the third time I'm repeating this tonight. I don't know if anyone else heard that here, but every lawyer always looks for continuance, 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 and maybe it'll go away, but it doesn't. Please, 30 days is plenty. If they can't get it done, they're never going to get it done.
Okay. I understand your frustration on this, but I want to let you know that it's not, as it stands right now, this council in consensus is not going to approve that location.
But you said that before.
I know, but what I'm saying is if you're going to talk to your clients, that should make your clients feel better. That at that point, really, as we've all discussed, that potentially, right now, the only way that that location could ever become viable for Verizon is if they litigate and win in federal court. Or if they file suit and our legal team determines that they've got a case and it's going to be a flip of the coin, and then we're going to have to ask the citizens of Lakeport if they want to spend $200,000 to go to federal court.
Well,
But
why
what I'm
don't you
saying,
ask Verizon if they can get this done in 30 days? I think they can. I'm a business person, and I could get it done in 30 days.
they've already stated 90.
When?
Did you state 90 days?
Nancy,
That you needed 90 days? Why haven't you gotten it done in the last 60?
Nancy, you need to address council.
Okay, but I'd like to hear from them why they haven't gotten it done in the last 60. He states, oh, we didn't know. You know, come on.
Nancy's done a lot for the community.
Folks, please. Nancy is addressing the council. And
Yeah, I'm trying to think 90 days for my physical health and they help my merchants and the neighbors over there. It's very trying. Some people didn't even speak tonight because it's too emotional for them. Some people didn't come. It's too emotional for them living in the neighborhood.
So Nancy, I'll put it very plainly. 90 days gives us an opportunity without litigation for them to potentially find a location that will help the citizens of Lakeport.
It's been stated here that city staff supported this location. I just, that really unglues me.
Well,
you know, I've appealed this. I've never heard of anything going on so long on appeal. It's usually decided at the next meeting of the Board of Supervisors, and I don't know, or 60 days at the most. Look at the dollar store in Kelseyville. Why can't our city and our city council do the same? Why keep hoping this over our
actually,
heads?
Nancy, the dollar store at Kelseyville has been going on for almost 6 months. They've continued and continued and continued. So, and we are not the Board of Supervisors, but I understand your plight. But what I'm saying is this decision, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. You should take some solace. You can still go to potential tenants. And barring Verizon suing us at this point, and this is my own personal view, and my vote is that site is not going to go with our approval.
Well, then if it's not, step to the plate and say, file a new application. Are they too cheap to pay the fee? What are your fees? A couple $100 for file a new application for another site? Let's step to the plate, deny it tonight, and file a new application. They're talking about cost. Is the cost of whatever Lake City Lakeport costs to file an application for another site going to break Verizon? I don't think so. Anyway, I've said enough. I've got to calm down. The Thai Bistros, you're all invited, even Verizon, to come to the Thai Bistro and enjoy some dinner. We've all been here too long. They've been waiting for us. So let's all get together and try to work out something. Thank you.
Thanks,
Go, Tiger.
David, can I ask you one quick question? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but legally, just from a legal standpoint, I know you're a lawyer, are we creating more danger for the city in extending this, rather than giving them a shorter time frame to make a decision to take us to court?
You're trading. You're trading risks, I guess. You're balancing one risk as opposed to another. Because you're allowing Verizon to keep their application open. You're averting the risk of a lawsuit soon for the possibility that there could be a potential alternative site, for the risk that there isn't going to be an alternative site and they're going to bring suit nonetheless with a better record. So those are the two things you're trading against one another. It's not a more problems than less.
Okay, so I'm a businessman and I represent the financial interest of the people of the city of Lakeport, and the idea that we say that we're having an alternative location only takes this off the table, postpones the possible lawsuit, gives them time to fortify their position. If they can't find another location, they will have a fortified position. They will be better off in federal court, in which case they would win the case. It would be back up where they're asking for now. But none of that would happen with our permission. It would be something that was forced upon us by the judiciary on a decision that was made based on a predominance of evidence in their favor. If we deny them right now, then there's a very good chance we will end up being sued, and it will cost hundreds of thousands of dollars with the same result that it'll be up there anyway, whether we wanted it there or not, because they base this on all kinds of information far and above emotion. It's all about trying to get all these different things set in motion so that law enforcement and schools and all this stuff, and they have a track record probably of dozens, if not hundreds of cases of victories, although they haven't done it lately. But if they are forced to do it immediately, it could come out that we're going to have to do it anyway. This way, there is a possibility, however remote, that they might realize or resolve they don't want to have a lawsuit. They would like to find an alternative location, and now that there's new information, they might just find it up on the courthouse, And if it doesn't go through, we're going to vote it down, and they're going to sue us anyway, but it's going to be 90 days from today, and then the money will start rolling out of our coffers into financial funds to try and fight these people who have a bank of lawyers with tremendous experience in cell phone litigation. So I don't see any risk other than the chance it could go right, and if it goes wrong, it's going to go wrong either way, but we're postponing the inevitability, and maybe they might work with us knowing that we're going to go to court and it's going to be all bad. So that's my feeling. I think it's the best decision to make with all the different things out there, because we know we're going to get a lawsuit if we deny it, uphold the appeal right now, and they are out of here. They're going to go storming out of here and start putting their paperwork together within 30 days. That's my feeling. So I don't see any danger in giving the 90 days. They might just find a home for it up there on the courthouse or the jail, and everything will be one happy place.
Is that a motion?
Did you get all that, Kelly? All right. Well, it sounds like you're ready for action. So somebody has a motion.
I haven't written anything down. Just, basically, I'd like to make a motion to grant a 90-day continuance to investigate an alternative locations, and the time and date to be
December 1st.
by December 1st, 2015.
Second.
Do we need to add for alternative locations?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you do? Okay, I'm sorry.
Can I read that back? So a motion to grant a 90-day continuance to investigate alternate locations, a hearing to be held December 1st, 2015.
Councilmember Parlett, did you want to include in your motion that those locations would include, but not be limited to, the courthouse building and jail, old former jail? I'm not sure.
I like included but not limited to. That would be fine. Yeah, so because if they find alternative locations other than that, we could be up for that. But obviously this one's off the table, so it's alternative locations, not designs, alternative locations.
Yes. Noted, amended. Your second. We have a motion and a second. Anything further, council? David? No, seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Opposed. Motion carries 4-1 with Councilmember Spillman in dissension. Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, for coming out. We appreciate everybody's words, taking your time out in the evening, especially for a long evening, but we really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thank you, City Council.
Thanks, Council.
City Council communications. It's going to be a little less exciting. Councilmember Parlett.
Okay, I hate to bring this up. I was contacted by a local citizen that was questioning whether or not his phone calls were being properly returned by the city manager, the mayor, and the city council member Turner for issues regarding the pipe and so forth between 16th and Orchid, and he thought that he was being blown off, and he said there was nothing happening in regards to the request for plans, and I told him that I'd seen numerous emails that Tom Carter had come across my desk, and of course he doesn't get emails because he's, I don't know, maybe he has a landline or a Verizon phone, I don't know. But anyway, he was concerned that he was not being treated properly, and that I'm so accessible at the meat block at the store. He was communicating with me his disillusionment with his ability to input and to get phone calls from the members of the city council, the mayor, and the city manager in particular. And so I told him that I would bring that up and say that, of course, your opinion is valid and important. And he did say that there was a 32-inch pipe that we had money to fix it before, the El Nino flooding that's going to come down by PG&E, and that we need to clean the Tulies out down there. So I thought that you might want to know about all that. And, do I need to mention his name, or should I bring it up?
No, I was going to say we spent countless hours and hours and went over
plans and just didn't like what we had to say, and so I don't know what more to.
Well, I just feel that this is communication.
He hasn't called me in 60
Well, you said that, the phone call, and then Maria, of course.
Totally mean, my bad.
She
Yeah.
said that she can't accept calls during her other work job, and she also said, I don't take phone calls from block numbers, which is totally legit. And then I don't know if he gave you his number at a private phone booth or whatever, but anyway, I just felt that
Superman booth.
it's my job to represent everyone in this community that has some kind of questionable, treatment or whatever, and I would just bring it up so that it get entered in the minutes or whatever, that I brought it up, and that we're concerned about his comments, and that we will try and do everything possible to remedy any problems that he may have now or in the future.
May I respond?
Absolutely.
Or do I need to wait till my
Was that, what was, yeah, no, please respond.
Yes. I have a Post-it note with his phone number on it that I've been looking at, thinking, oh yeah, I gotta call him. Because it is accurate. I prefer not to do city business when I'm being paid by county taxpayer money. So I did communicate that when he called me directly at work, and have been meaning to talk to him. And so I'd like it reflected in the minutes that I actually did talk to some city staff about setting up a time to further understand the staff position, and so that I can respond to our constituents more accurately. So, but thank you, and I totally, sorry that
I didn't mean to throw anybody under the bus.
I have a series of mishaps of why I didn't get to call him back, which I will tell him when
I don't want to be the spokesperson for the city of Lakeport with this man.
Too late.
And
Nominate Councilmember
I
Parlay.
totally understand and don't mean to imply that I don't value his
And
input.
staff did not ignore him. Staff
No, I'm just
spent
saying
88
alleged,
hours
yeah.
with him, and we called him back when he's asked for a phone call back.
Anything further?
No, I think it was quite enough.
Councilmember Spillman.
I just want to apologize to Dan for having to sit through the meeting. You never got to say a word, and you sat there.
He was not done yet. He was building a PowerPoint
I know,
presentation.
stoically.
Yeah, he was doing something else for his next.
No, other than that, I'm good.
Councilmember Turner. Pro Tem.
Just the next planning commission meeting, I'm not going to be attending, and so I don't know who my area planning commission, I'm not sure who the alternate is.
Councilmember Spillman is our alternate.
Okay, so.
That's a tough one. That's at 9 a.m. Clear Lake.
Ooh, okay. What day is it? I know I got,
week from tomorrow.
September 9th.
And it may be a moot point.
You may not be needed as long as they have a quorum.
Yeah, I mean, the chair is aware that you won't be there. So,
Right.
and I will be there.
You will?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're probably okay, but.
And I'll follow up with you on that, Mark.
Okay, if
Or
you would,
Stacy
yeah.
and I would. We'll make sure we'll get a hold of Marcia.
is that at the council chambers? Or?
It'll be that one. No, that one. That one's actually probably. Well, it says Clear Lake, but I wonder if that's Lower Lake. It's probably at the transit. We'll have to
Well,
find
just
out.
let me know.
Yeah.
Might be the city. Nothing.
For me, same thing. ABC next week and transit. LAFCO the week after that, discussing our sphere of influence for the city of Lakeport. And I would encourage folks to attend donkey baseball at the fair on Thursday night as our local law enforcement squares off against our local first responders from fire and emergency services. So that'll be at the fairgrounds during Lake County Fair. Of course, enjoy the fair. Margaret?
Nothing.
Anything else, David? Dan?
I've got a report.
Chief?
Just to thank you for agreeing to volunteer to announce the donkey baseball. Looking forward to that part of it too.
That'll be some good nicknames for law enforcement firefighters.
I think our Miss Lake County team is throwing up the first pitch.
Oh yeah, I heard that. Yeah, they were trying to set that. That's awesome.
Yes, I invited them to do that, and we definitely are looking forward to that part of it too.
Kevin?
Nothing other than it sounds like I'm going to be calling our public services department tomorrow at 8 a.m. Filling in on what he's got coming.
A little heads up. Kelly?
No report.
All right. Well, thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out. This meeting is adjourned.